Very good morning to you. Well, here we go. The biggest budget in a generation.
After months of rumours and build-up, the first female Chancellor in history will reveal all in a matter of hours.
Rachel Reeves will use Labour's first budget in over 10 years to shape the political agenda for years to come.
Well, throughout the morning, we'll be joined by you as we get to grips with what today means for the great British public.
It's Budget Day being overshadowed. The teenager accused of the Southport murders is also charged with separate terror offences.
Bye-bye Sunak. The former Prime Minister has his final PMQs today as Conservative leader. Later, we'll be speaking to Shadow Leader of the House, Chris Philp.
Kamala Harris makes her case to America from the White House as Donald Trump speaks from Mar-a-Lago in Florida. Is it enough for either to power ahead in those extremely tight polls?
Another fine day for many of us, although we keep a lot of cloud cover. Meanwhile, it turns increasingly windy in the far north ahead of Halloween. I'll have the full forecast coming up soon.
On this Wednesday morning, a very good morning to you. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
So here we go. History will be made today as the Chancellor hands down Labour's first budget in 15 years and becomes the first woman to do so.
Yeah, whatever way you look at it, it's going to be history-making when the Chancellor delivers her announcement at 12:30. She's likely going to promise to invest.
However, Labour's big day has been overshadowed by the news that the suspected Southport attacker, Axel Rudy Cabana, has been separately charged with offences under the Terrorism Act.
Our political correspondent Adam Cherry joins us now. And Adam, the budget has been top of the agenda for weeks now, potentially even months. But now it does look as though it's been overshadowed by these new charges against Axel Rudy Cabana. What's the Home Secretary said about this?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's just extraordinary. As you say, this is across all the front pages. Coming in last night at about 5 o'clock. The Home Secretary saying, let the police get on with their work, don't prejudice this investigation. We're just focused on the families at this point. I'll have more to say on that in January when the trial is held. It is extraordinary for obvious reasons, but also because under normal circumstances, any budget would dominate every front page, particularly one like this. So much of it has been pre-trailed, so we know it's going to be a huge tax rising and taxpayers spending budget. Let's just take a look at some of the headline measures. So last night we also heard the national living wage will rise to over £12 per hour. That's about £1,400 per year for those on full-time work. The national minimum wage for those between 18 and 21 will also go up to the equivalent of about £2,500 a year for those in full-time work. On the tax rising side, we've talked about this many times. Working people, that sort of elusive definition, working people should be protected. The Prime Minister last night telling his cabinet sort of what that really means. It means those on sort of PAYE, looking at their pay slips, should not see any difference because national insurance for employees, income tax and VAT will not rise. However, what we are expecting to rise is national insurance for employers between 1% and 2%. If it goes up by 2%, that will raise around £15 billion for the Treasury, if not slightly more. So it's a huge measure. Of course, there's the £22 billion black hole, which we've heard so much about, so that doesn't quite cover it entirely. There are other areas where we'll have to see some tax rises, according to the government. Capital gains tax, the sale of shares, although not the sale of second homes. Inheritance tax, we don't quite know yet exactly how they'll fiddle with that, but we are expecting some changes, perhaps raising the gifting amount from 7 years to 10 years. But as you say, we find all this out in detail at 12:30 when Rachel Reeves, the first female Chancellor, stands at the dispatch box and delivers this, and Rishi Sunak responds in his last act in the House of Commons as Tory leader.
Adam, thank you very much indeed. And on the question of the budget, let's now speak to Dan Byrne. Dan is from Manchester. We say good morning to him. He is an electrician. He has his own business? Oh, sorry for keeping you in suspense. Were we not seeing Dan?
Dan is not
Dan's
ready
not there.
just
All
yet.
right, all
But it's
right.
interesting because Dan runs this small business, and as Adam Cherry was just saying there, they are the ones now with concerns because minimum wages are going up to £12.21 an hour, up by 6.7% or
Yeah.
something. That's a cost, isn't it, for small businesses? Then you look at the workers' rights reforms as well. It's all going to impact on small businesses. So, Dan, I believe you can join us now. Dan, how are you feeling about the likes of minimum wages rising in April, that's now been confirmed, and the workers' rights reforms that we've heard of? I mean, great for employees, not so great for small business owners.
Nope, not really at all, really. We're just getting hammered and hammered and hammered, so, yeah.
And I believe that you are off to Spain because of all the tax rises that you're expecting.
Yes, so considering moving the family to Spain as an alternative, because it's become a bit of a dire environment for sort of small business and investors in the UK. So we're looking at alternatives, yeah.
What are your fears about what's to come today in the budget?
So he spoke about not raising taxes for the working people. Obviously, that sort of paints a picture of the employers and the investors who are, bringing value to the economy. They're going to get hammered. So, yeah.
How many people do you employ?
Sorry, what was that?
How many people do you employ, Dan?
Yeah, we're only small, so there's only sort of 4 of us. Yeah. But we've been established sort of over 10 years, so it's not getting any better.
No, Dan, it isn't, and it doesn't matter who it is. And the thing that makes me absolutely want to throw up as regards politicians is they all repeat the same mantra. We are the party for business. We are the party for small businesses. Anybody that's ever run or tried to run a small business will realise what rubbish all that is. And you're one of those people.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know where to begin with it, really.
Try and explain to people. They'll be looking at them and saying, that Dan Byrne, it's okay for him. He's making a fortune. He's got his own business. He's raking it in everywhere. Just try and explain to people what your outgoings are.
Fixed costs have gone through the roof. Everyone knows the cost of living. Everyone, I've got a young family. Everyone's trying to just, raise families. It's just a terrible situation, isn't it?
So it's not even just business. It's not even just your professional life, your personal life as well. I imagine you've got childcare costs as well.
Yeah. It's not great. It's not a good place to be. I don't think anyone's looking at the UK right now thinking, I know, I want to come and start a business there. I want to come invest money there. It's just a bad environment for business in general at the moment, isn't it?
But what makes you think, Dan, that things would be any better in Spain?
I'm not painting that as the golden alternative, but, I've got to look at my children and sort of say they're only young once and where's going to be better for them, while they're young. So,
Dan,
I don't think in the next 5 years, I don't think it's going to get any better sort of here.
What support would you like to see? What would you like to see happen in the budget today? What would you like to see announced?
It's not going to happen, but, more support for business and more support for, business owners, people who are going to come and bring investment to, infrastructure and housing and whatever else. So it's just not going to happen, though, is it?
Cheers, Dan. Thanks very much indeed. We hope the budget's not as bad as you fear that it may be, but I suspect it will. Thank you very much indeed. We'll leave it there.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we've been hearing how awful it's going to be for weeks and difficult decisions have got to be made and there's tough times ahead. But then there's Rachel Reeves speaking last night saying, my belief is that Britain's going to burn brighter than ever. That's a different line of...
It's all talk.
Yeah.
It will be as Dan fears. And the trouble about the civil service and the trouble about politicians is that so few of them have had practical business experience.
Yeah.
So few of them know what it's like to actually try and earn a living outside politics. Full-time politicians, career politicians, are just not what we need in terms of this country. I mean, the idea how any politician can sit and say, right, we're all in this this pickle, this hole. So what we'll do is we'll make it harder for everybody out there working. We're going to make it harder. We're going to hit you with more taxes, and that's it. Do they have any idea how hard it is, whether you're starting out in life, whether you're established in life with a family, whether you're coming to the end of your time and you're old and you're decrepit and whatever? Do you have any idea how hard it is to maintain standards, to set yourself goals, to set yourself standards, to live the best that you can? And I just don't think people do. And then we get this whole other thing that, you know, you've got a lot of people on drink and drugs, you know, turn to a life of crime and whatever. And why do they do that? Because they have nothing to look forward to. There is no reward in this country. There's nothing saying, come on, if you try, if you just give it that bit extra, we'll be there behind you. It'll be good for you. It'll be good for the country. There's none of that going on. That's the way it is. Just my view. Let us have your views on this morning. Have your say.
Yeah, gbnews.com/your say. Let us know what you think, what you're expecting to happen at 12:30 this afternoon.
The suspect accused of murdering 3 young girls in Southport in July is facing 2 new charges.
Yes, Axel Rudakabana is now charged with making a biological toxin and having an Al-Qaeda training manual for potential terrorism preparation.
Now, these charges, they're separate to those over the killings. The police aren't treating the stabbings as an act of terrorism. Rudakabana will appear via video link at Westminster Magistrates today. Our Home and Security editor Mark White has this report.
It's 3 months since that horrific attack in Southport that left 3 innocent young girls dead, 8 others injured, along with 2 adults. And now the significant development, the announcement by Merseyside Police of 2 new charges against the key suspect, Axel Rudakabana. He will now face charges relating to the production of the deadly toxin ricin, and also a terror charge relating to the downloading of an Al-Qaeda terror manual. This is what the Merseyside Chief Constable, Serena Kennedy, said a little earlier.
The 2 further offences relate to evidence obtained by Merseyside Police during searches of Axel Rudakabana's home address as part of a lengthy and complex investigation which has been ongoing since the 29th of July. The additional charges are the production of a biological toxin, namely ricin, contrary to Section 1 of the Biological Weapons Act 1974, and possession of information, namely a PDF file entitled Military Studies in the Jihad Against the Tyrants, the Al-Qaeda Training Manual, likely to be useful to a person committing or preparing to commit an act of terrorism, contrary to Section 58 of the Terrorism Act 2000.
Well, the Southport attack led to a great deal of anger and an outbreak of violent disorder in a number of towns and communities in England and Northern Ireland. The Merseyside Chief Constable is calling for calm amongst the public as they absorb the news of these 2 new charges, and is urging the public not to speculate, given that this case is now active.
I would strongly advise anyone against speculating as to the motivation in this case. The criminal proceedings against Axel Rudakabana are live, and he has a right to a fair trial. It is extremely important that there is no reporting, commentary or sharing of information online that could prejudice these proceedings. I want to remind everyone that the trial is scheduled for January next year.
Well, Axel Rudakabana is due to appear before Videolink at Westminster Magistrates Court in West London tomorrow to face the 2 new charges against him.
Thank you, Mark. Let's move on and find out the other stories making the news on this Wednesday morning.
A fire has broken out overnight at the UK's nuclear submarine base in Cumbria. Locals have posted pictures online showing a building at the shipyard on fire, which reportedly began just before 1 a.m. this morning. Cumbria Fire and Rescue Services have encouraged residents to stay away from the area.
Kamala Harris has made her closing argument ahead of America's general election on Tuesday. The Democrat candidate made her case at the same place Donald Trump spoke from shortly before the White House riots.
We know who Donald Trump is. He is the person who stood at this very spot nearly 4 years ago and sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol to overturn the will of the people in a free and fair election.
Flash floods have wreaked havoc across eastern and southern parts of Spain. Several bodies have been found, but the exact number of deaths is yet to be made public. Rescue efforts have continued overnight. Local media in Valencia is reporting that hundreds of people could still be trapped.
Going to have a look ahead at the weather situation for today and the next few days. Let's go to Aidan McGivern.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Same again today compared with yesterday. It's dry for most, some brighter spells here and there, but it will be windy in the far north later. For the time being, rain and wind staying away, but for much of the UK it's a misty start to the day. Any early fog will lift, and then there's going to be variable amounts of cloud floating here and there. You'd be lucky to catch some cloud breaks in the south, whilst central and northeast mainland Scotland faring best for some sunshine. Wherever you are though, it's relatively mild, 15 to 17 Celsius. A little colder for North Scotland, not as cold as it's going to get by Friday. And at this stage, mostly fine. But heading into the evening, the first signs of a change for Shetland. Outbreaks of rain turning up, increasing breeze, that wind picking up also for the Outer Hebrides. But it's staying clear for much of Aberdeenshire into Fife, as well as the Central Belt. Now for Northern Ireland, a lot of cloud around, but as you can see, there are some cloud breaks further south across England and Wales. They're going to come and go through the day. There will be a large amount of cloud still remaining. That means on Wednesday nights, where we keep the cloud, it's going to stay mild and it's not going to be misty. But there is an increased chance of some breaks in the cloud across southern parts in particular, and as a result there'll be a few fog patches first thing and temperatures will dip into these single figures. Meanwhile, it's increasingly windy for the far north and northwest of Scotland, with outbreaks of rain turning up, and it is a breezy day on Thursday. Eastern parts of Scotland and the far north could see gusts of 50 or 60 miles an hour. And it's increasingly damp over western Scotland with a lot of low cloud. The wettest weather there will be for Shetland and Orkney, also the windiest weather. Further south, lighter winds, mostly dry, and again, some cloud breaks coming and going, so some brighter spells in the south, 14 or 15 Celsius.
Woo! A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Here's something interesting I'm reading this morning. The way you would treat your animal, your pet animal, particularly your dog, depends on how you were brought up. So if you were brought up in a disciplinarian family or whatever, you'll be quite disciplinary towards your dog and bark commands at it. And if your parents were sort of quite cool and lean and easygoing with you, you will be exactly the same with your dog.
That's interesting, and I think that's probably true in my case.
I think it's true in my case as well.
So what are you like with Maggie?
Am I what?
What are you like with Maggie, your dog?
I would be quite very kind to her and very. I wouldn't be very, wouldn't bark a lot of orders at her or be very disciplined to her. Just whatever she wants, she gets, basically.
Oh, that's nice. And is that the way your parents were with you?
My parents would have been quite easygoing, Basically, at the end of the day, you did what they said. And you knew when they were serious or when they were very easygoing with you. Yeah,
I know what you mean. So I shower Lulu with love, which my parents definitely did. Yeah. But I can't bear it when she's barking loads. I can't bear the sound. And they didn't like it when we played really loudly. So maybe that's exactly the same.
Might well be.
I think there might be some sense in that.
Might be some sense in that.
Who came up with that?
French. No, that's not.
University of Glasgow and Stirling. Yeah. There you are. Yeah. And talking of dogs, actually, I've just seen it. We've got the same idea. I've just seen this story in the papers about dogs this morning. Apparently, Animals get grumpier as they get older. This is dogs and cats. They're exactly like humans. They get a bit cranky in their old age, which probably isn't a surprise if you've got an older dog at home. Apparently, they want to reduce the chances of catching illness as they weaken. So they get quieter. They don't like to socialise as much. Don't like to nip out and about.
There you go.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
No, you could be nipping out and about everywhere, all over Christmas, because Christmas could be on us this year with the Great British Christmas giveaway.
Yes, here's how you can be in with a chance to win it.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. First, we'll give you £20,025 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you £5,000 to spend on all of your Christmas presents. Christmas lunch, that's on us too. With a further £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. And the best news, you'll get it all in time for the big day. For your chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good.
Well, up next on the programme, we're going to get the latest on the American elections. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris neck and neck in the polls, and the big poll is next Tuesday.
Certainly is, yeah, and it could take days to actually get a result because things are so tight. Anyway, we'll get all the details next.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Breakfast. Now to the US, where there are just 6 days to go until the new leader of the free world is elected.
Overnight, Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris delivered her closing pitch at Washington's National Mall, the same site where Donald Trump told his supporters to fight like hell shortly before the Capitol riot.
Well, meanwhile, Republican nominee Donald Trump promises voters a new golden age for America.
We know who Donald Trump is. He is the person who stood at this very spot nearly 4 years ago and sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol to overturn the will of the people in a free and fair election.
They've embarrassed us. They've embarrassed us. Kamala has embarrassed us. She doesn't have what it takes. I'm asking you to dream big again. You're going to dream big, and this is going to be a very special time. It's going to be America's new golden age.
Let's get the views now of Professor Scott Lucas, Professor of US and International Politics at the University of Dublin. Scott, they're making this out, you know, there's hardly a cigarette paper between the two of them. What would you say? Do you think it is as close as that, and it will be as close as that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a toss-up race, and anybody that wants to call it, I'll take their money right now. We've got 7 swing states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan in the north. We've got Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, and the Sun Belt. The margin between Harris and Trump is less than 2% in all of those states. In 5 of those states, it's less than 1%. So what's really key here is not to keep chasing polls, not to make the predictions. It's just whether we get a focus on issues, these really, really important issues, some of which you highlighted in your introduction in this final 6 days.
And that's the point, isn't it, Scott, that we seem to drift away from policy all the time. It always comes back to personality, to personal jibes between the two candidates. I mean, Trump at his Pennsylvania rally talking about Kamala Harris, saying she doesn't have what it takes to be president. And we've just heard a clip of Kamala Harris there in Washington, D.C. last night, saying that you know who Donald Trump is. I mean, it's just the personal attacks time and time again.
No, I think there have been some issues that have been brought out here. If we want to just talk about the issues that were brought out in Harris's speech last night, she talked about the expansion of Medicare, a key issue for many Americans, versus Trump's threat to cut it. She talked about women's rights, especially reproductive rights, which have been threatened by the Supreme Court decision over Roe v. Wade and Trump's position. She talked about trying to pursue compromise rather than conflict when you approach the economy, when you approach immigration. She talked about especially that vital issue about defending the U.S. system. That's why she was there at that spot where Trump, effectively told his people to prevent the orderly transfer of power almost 4 years ago. And indeed, that question of the U.S. system, that question of freedom versus division, may be the overriding issue in this campaign.
So, Scott, what way is it going to go next Tuesday?
If I knew that, I'd be at the bookies rather than talking to you good folks. I just think it's key that people turn out to vote. It's the most important election since 1865, and that they vote not on diversions, not on character assassination, but on those issues that we just talked about a moment ago.
Could it take a while, Scott, for us to know the result next week, considering just how close everything is at the moment?
It could well do. I mean, although we did tend to know by about breakfast time the day after the election, last time around, it took several days for that to be confirmed. That's how close the Biden-Trump race is in 2020. And I think this race could be even closer.
Is there a risk that Joe Biden's comment about garbage, which has angered Trump fans, has that overshadowed Kamala Harris's final major campaign rally last night?
Only if the Trumpist media succeed in leading everyone by the nose. I mean, Joe Biden made a statement I wouldn't have made, but the more important speech is from the candidate, Kamala Harris. That's what we should be talking about today. And let's remember that Biden was referring to the far more destructive statements that were made in Trump's rally on Sunday. And just that quick reminder, that was a rally that set itself up not only to say that Puerto Rico was a floating island of garbage. It used sexual slurs, vile sexual slurs about Hispanics. It used vile insults about blacks. It called Kamala Harris a prostitute, a Satan, the Antichrist. And that rally, rather than Trump distancing himself from those comments, he again threatened to use the military against enemies within. I think Biden's statement, while it's one, again, that shouldn't have been used, I think it pales in comparison to that far more serious threats that came out at that rally.
Well, he has distanced himself from those comments, hasn't he? Trump has said in Pennsylvania, nobody loves Puerto Rico more than I do.
Well, he distanced himself from one comment. He distanced himself from the Puerto Rico comment. He didn't distance himself from the other comments about Hispanics, about blacks, about Kamala Harris, a vile insult about Hillary Clinton that I can't repeat here. And he didn't distance himself from the enemies within statement. In fact, he doubled down on it. So now the Trump campaign knew that Puerto Rico comment could get them in trouble when you've got almost 600,000 people of Puerto Rican descent in Pennsylvania alone. But trust me, the rest of that language, Donald Trump was behind it. And that's the choice for the voters. Do you back that type of image of America, or do you back the alternative of one where you try to pursue some type of compromise rather than confrontation and dialogue rather than division?
Okay.
Scott, we'll leave it there. Thanks for your thoughts. Really appreciate it, as always. Thank you. Well, of course, we love to know the way you think, and every day we run that poll of the day. Today, the question is...
Do you trust Rachel Reeves to put more pounds in people's pockets? We'll be bringing you the live results throughout the day, so make sure you stay tuned. The final result will be announced later in Martin Daubney's show.
Hardly much point in voting on that. I can't imagine who's going to vote for that. Who's going to actually believe that? Well, maybe it's just me. But anyway, for all our latest polls, news and how to vote, you go to gbnews.com/poll and it's there. With that, we'll take a break. We've got Norman Baker, we've got Freddie Gray, and they're going to go through the papers to talk about the stories making the news today. Hope you can join us.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Lincolnshire, the A18 is closed in both directions along the Kingsway in Scunthorpe after an accident. It's closed between Scotter Road and the A159 at the Queensway roundabout. The A1 in Nottinghamshire is partly blocked by a shed load at the turn for the A46 at Newark. In London, Hackney Road in Shoreditch remains closed eastbound off the A10 Shoreditch High Street for emergency water main repairs. There are delays of up to half an hour with some cancelled trains into and out of Waterloo Station in London because of a signalling problem between Waterloo and Vauxhall. And on the M26 in Kent, there are westbound delays on the approach to the M25, taking around 10 minutes to get through because of lane closures for roadworks. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Maria, potholes are the bane of everybody that uses a road, whether you're a car driver or a cyclist. As a cyclist, are even worse. How have we got into this situation where our roads are in such a bad state?
Well, part of it is to do with actually our climate. In somewhere like, say, Sweden, like the snow will fall on the ground, it will stay there for months. Whereas here we've got what's called a freeze-thaw climate, where the water comes down, then we might have a cold snap and it freezes, and the water within the pothole will then expand and make the pothole bigger. Then we might have a mild spell, and then that process repeats. So, we do actually need extra funding to acknowledge the fact that, we just live in a climate where we're sort of particularly vulnerable to potholes.
Why? I mean, the fact that this happens, these weather conditions happen, is no great surprise to anybody. Why has the problem been ignored for so long?
I think what's happened is we've had like short-term funding. So it's like, oh, there's a pothole, let's patch it up. Oh, there's another one, let's patch it up. But the patches aren't actually really that strong. So then they break down again. So, really what we need is to have roads completely resurfaced. And then they'll just be pothole-free for a very long time. And that really is how funding should be. That's the direction funding should go in, as opposed to just sort of like dribs and drabs here and there.
Do you think this government are going to be good for the motorist, or is there indeed a war on the motorist still?
The different parties come in and they've all got different policies that they wheel out, then they cancel the policies, and then there's so much lack of transparency. Like, for example, with the pothole issue, sometimes the government, whichever government is in office, will do some big showboating about how they're going to give X amount of potholes, and you still think that sounds really good.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Well, look, today is all about the budget and, what will be there. None of us have a clue, and we all just sort of, the word is that it's going to be bad news, isn't it? That's just the way people think. Norman Baker, former Liberal Democrat minister, and Freddie Gray, deputy editor of The Spectator, are here to give their take, their views. What are you expecting, Freddie?
Well, I think Labour have made everybody dread this budget so much. Just by telling us so much about it, just by hyping it, really. I mean, letting it be hyped. I suspect a lot of people by the end of the day will think, oh, well, maybe it's not that bad. But I think it will be bad for the British economy long term. I think raising national insurance contributions will disincentivise businesses from hiring. You could say that British employment over the last few years has been reasonably healthy and it can afford to take a hit. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think increasing capital gains doesn't necessarily just target the rich. It targets people who do sensible things like invest in shares and so on. And I think the definition of what a person who the government can target is for being rich, I think working people, this phrase working people, really expands to mean most of the population now. And I think a lot of people will be very angry eventually. I just don't think they'll have this immediate horror at the budget.
Norman?
Well, I mean, you say, Eamonn, that we don't know what's in the budget. I mean, this has been leaked beyond belief.
Have you ever known a budget to be this leaked and this briefed before?
It's got worse and worse. But, of course, the reason governments do this is because they can get their own story out with their own spin, and the opposition doesn't know until they read in the papers what's being said. And, of course, the Speaker stands up and says, you mustn't do this. Well, the Speaker's got no sanction on the government of the day. So, I mean, he's wasting his breath, to be honest, by saying that. But, back in 1947, before I was born, Hugh Dalton, who was the Chancellor at the time, gave one bit of information to a journalist, which then appeared before the budget speech. He had to lose his job because of that. And now every single thing is in the papers. It's, Yesman has famously said there's a verb, which is I brief, you leak, he commits an offence on the Official Secrets Act. So there's a difference in style between who's doing what. So we know what's going to be in the budget, quite a lot of it. They've got mixed messages because on the one hand they say, as Freddie says, it's going to be all doom and gloom. But then they're also talking about sunny uplands and how it's going to be wonderful and everything else. So there's mixed messages coming out. There's even mixed messages from the announcements we've had so far, because we're apparently going to look after strivers, whoever they are, and working families. But the first announcement yesterday from Keir Starmer was that bus fares are going up from £2 to £3. Well, buses, and I speak as a former Transport Minister, buses are predominantly used, not exclusively, and not in London, but predominantly across the country, used by poorer people to get to work. They're the people who don't want the bus fares to go up. So the recovery in bus numbers, in passenger numbers, which has happened since COVID, painfully, we're almost back to where we were, it's going to be hit for six again, because £3 is a big increase on £2. Psychologically, it's a big increase.
I think it's something like £500, £600 a year. And in terms of the working person that we've heard so much about, I mean, that is directly impacting working people up and down the country.
Yeah, I mean, so, the government's saying we're not going to affect a very narrow definition, we're going to put up VAT, we're not putting up income tax for working people. OK, they probably won't. But, around the edges are doing stuff which is going to make people pay more, including poor people and working people.
And somebody who's been vindicated is Rishi Sunak. I mean, everything he said in the election about what Labour will do to taxes was true.
But then, Freddie, they are saying there's this £22 billion black hole. It has to be filled. Would Sunak have tried to fill it? Does it have to be filled?
I think there is a fiscal black hole that has to be addressed. We have a huge problem with debt in this country. I think the Tory argument traditionally would be you can fix that by growing the economy, by increasing growth. It's true that the Tories failed to do that. However, I think Labour have exaggerated the size of the fiscal hole, and they've made it worse themselves. You see, by giving
Norman,
pay increases
I feel they've gone looking for a fight they didn't necessarily have to take on. Why try and fill and get rid of this black hole? Why not just do a little bit of it, or why take it all on?
Well, look, there is a toxic inheritance, to be perfectly fair to the government, but the public are becoming less interested in the past and more interested in the future. So they're not going to be bothered very much with what the Tories did for very much longer. So, look, Rachel Reeves is trying to be a kind of iron chancellor, you know, kind of I'm very tough, or that kind of mantra which the Treasury officials are no doubt encouraging her to take forward. I'm not sure that's the right message to give to the people at large in the country. I think, you know, we've had enough of tough chancellors who want a bit of kindness, a bit of TLC and a bit of compassion. We're not going to see very much of that, I don't think.
Well, they're going to say it's not the time for that. But it's interesting what Norman was saying, alluding to the mood change from Rachel Reeves. I mean, it's been bleak, hasn't it, the messaging over the past few weeks? But all of a sudden it's, you know, we're building a brighter Britain, it's going to be brighter than ever, and the economy is growing, there's going to be money in people's pockets. I mean, it's come out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is what governments do. They think, you know, we'll take the painful, you know, we're taking the painful decisions now, and then we will sort of build a narrative as the years go on, and they're betting on a boom. But I just think with Labour, you know, Rachel Reeves is supposed to be about securonomics, is the phrase, you know, and it's sort of moving us towards a more social democratic, more European model for the economy. They're not quite doing that. They're creating dread, panicking, and then creating a bit of hope. And, you know, I think the problem with all British government, the problem with Westminster, is they, as Norman quite rightly says, they're far too worried about headlines, building narratives and so on. They're not actually worried about government.
If you, Norman, I'm just looking at the front page of the Eye here. Yeah. If you're a low earner, that seems good news. She hands a 6.7% wage rise to lower earners.
Yes, this is the increase in the minimum wage, which I think is a good thing. I don't think the cost will necessarily be welcomed by all businesses, and there's certainly one or two businesses saying, I listened to someone who's running a chain of restaurants, I think it was yesterday on the news, saying this is going to be very... It will take half my profits to pay for this. So I think it's not without risk in terms of small businesses. But nevertheless, I think it's good to recognise that people on lower incomes need to have a bit of help. Of course, in the coalition days, dare I say, when I was in government, what we did then was raise the income tax threshold so that you didn't start paying income tax, you'd earn more money. And that's actually a better way of doing it, in my view. However, that's not what she's doing. She's raising the minimum wage. But, again, you know, the government giveth and the government taketh away. Yeah. Because, you know, this increase in minimum wage will be spent on bus fares or other things which are going up.
Somebody has to pay for it in these restaurants and whatever it is, and that ends up everybody else.
Somebody, it happens to be working people who always end up paying. So it is preposterous to just keep talking about working people while you are bilking them, essentially. And, you know, the Chancellor's talking about invest. There are arguments to be made that Britain needs to invest in certain areas. But what we're seeing is an increasingly large state in Britain, and not necessarily a very efficient one. In fact, quite the opposite.
Freddie, looking ahead to the US election next week, what's this take on Donald Trump and how he's going to affect us if he were to win?
Well, there are great fears in the city about the next Trump administration, and it's largely to do with hearsay, really. I mean, there has been a suggestion from Trump world that they're going to put a 10% tariff on all imports into America. If they did that, some people are saying a 20% tariff. If they did that, that would crash the global economy. But, of course, with Trump world, you have to take everything with a pinch of salt. I don't think... I may be wrong about this. I don't think Donald Trump, even if he has fallen out with the Labour Party for various reasons, I don't think he's going to charge a 10 or 20% tariff on all imports coming in from Britain. If he did on Britain, that would be very, very bad news for the British economy, because about sort of 20% of our imports, about 20% of our exports go to America. So, yes, that would be very bad. Again, though, with Donald Trump, you just don't know. It's all noise. So I think British people shouldn't be quite as worried as some people think they should be.
OK.
OK.
You two, stay where you are. We're going to go to a very quick break. We'll be back with more papers in just 2 minutes' time.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30am.
Only on GB News.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
What about train Wi-Fi? The Times. It's so funny. The Times did this story because I was on the train yesterday trying to do some work and connecting to the Wi-Fi, and it happens all the time. It just doesn't work. It's pathetic. And then I opened the Times, and they've done a massive investigation. Loads of different rail routes from north to south.
Was that the James Bond thing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I think, well, that passenger got through, or almost got through, one episode. One James Bond movie in 8 hours.
But you know, it's interesting. We call it train Wi-Fi, but it isn't. It's just really a SIM card on a train, really. So if your own phone's not going to get signal, why would we assume that the train's going to have signal? It just doesn't work like that. Unless you're in Japan or South Korea, whose infrastructure is infinitely better than ours, you're just not going to get signal. You have to download those films way before you get on
There is technology that can help with that. You know, there really is. If they found ways to put it underground, they can get it on ground and get you going. I definitely think, you know, with the price that we're paying for these tickets, they can get the Wi-Fi going. There is technology.
That's why it's so frustrating, isn't
Call
it?
Elon, get a Starlink. Let's go.
If you're a passenger paying hundreds of pounds for a season ticket or whatever you call it, and you know, commute to work every single day, and you're paying all this money, and you can't.
It's so expensive. You'd expect Wi-Fi at the basic. Yeah, exactly.
But it happens with phone signal as well. I'll be walking down London in Park Lane or somewhere else, or down on the south coast. I just don't have phone signal, and I think to myself, what on earth is going on?
Doesn't it feel like 5G's made it worse, though?
Yeah.
Because I feel like 4G, that didn't happen so much, but 5G just feels like...
Yeah, and then I always get this little E in the top corner of my phone, and I don't get any signal. I think it's got worse over the past couple of years. Yeah, especially with 5G. I agree with that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Today's Rishi Sunak's last stand as Prime Minister for the leader of the Conservative Party. And then it's either going to be Robert Jenrick or Kemi Badenoch next. And Norman, I want to look at Kemi Badenoch wasn't doing a lot of interviews, which I thought was strange because Jenrick was doing every interview going, every appearance possible on TV. She's having to change her ways this week.
Well, I think the answer was that she thought that Jenrick was losing votes by speaking out. And the more people heard him, the less they wanted him, and therefore she would be by default. And I think there's now a recognition, she's assumed, I think, that that's not necessarily the case, and just to say something positive to get some positive votes from her party members, I think is where it is.
What do you make of it, Freddie?
Well, she says she's not rude, she has a high stress tolerance. I've worked with Kemi. She is pretty rude.
Oh, is she?
Yeah. But she's, I mean, she can be very nice, she can be delightful sometimes. She can be very rude, particularly if she doesn't think are important.
What do you mean by rude? So dismissive of people?
Dismissive of people, and I think actually she's quite an unusual personality.
Oh.
I think she perhaps doesn't have very high EQ, emotional intelligence. But I suppose the really question doesn't really matter about whether she's rude. Is she effective? And I'm not sure she's been that effective in any job she's done.
Interesting.
She's effective at campaigning.
The thing about being rude, some people think they're strong and they're strident, being rude and whatever. That would bring out in me, oh, shut up. You would just be rude back to them, really.
It depends how she's being rude, if you like, because if she's being robust and saying what she thinks without any frills around the edges, then that's one thing. And you could say she's being abrasive. Well, that's a personality trait. I don't particularly mind that myself. Well, that's very different to, say, Trump, who says that Kamala Harris is mentally impaired or whatever he says, which is simply a smear. So I think if you're basing your rudeness, if you like, on fact and just being robust about it, that's fair enough. So, but of course, it's not everybody's cup of tea. But what we don't want, dare I say on GB News, is a whole lot of snowflakes but not able to say what they think.
Well, yeah, I mean, although people that work with Trump, obviously a lot of people have fallen out with him, but people that have worked sort of in his office and things tend to like him. I think that's not necessarily the case with Kemi. I think a lot of people think she was a bit of a nightmare to work with. But who knows, she could be a very effective leader of the Tory party.
But you would tend to be a Jenrick fan then?
No. No, don't think much of him either.
That's the point, actually. Look, whoever wins this is almost irrelevant, actually, with a huge Labour majority. And I would put a bet on now on air that whichever one of these two wins won't be the Conservative leader in the next election campaign.
Can either of them unite the party?
There's not much of a party to unite at the moment, so possibly, yes. I think some Tories are enjoying life at the moment because, for once, they can go on the media and not be just blamed for absolutely everything that's going wrong. And it's quite fun sticking it to Labour when they're having a bad time. But the party itself is in grave danger from reform. And I think it's a bad time for Conservatives.
See, this grumpiness may just be part of personality or nature, either human or animal, because there is a story today, and well, it's actually front page of the Star.
It is, front page today.
It says, what does it say there? How Grumpy Cat Got So Grumpy. Basically, it's saying that animals, like people, get grumpier as they get older.
Like Kemi Badenoch, they get more and more grumpy. I'm getting grumpier as I get older.
Are you?
Intolerant.
Yeah, my temper's getting worse, I've noticed.
What do you think that is? Lack of sleep?
Children.
Kids?
Lack of sleep, work, life, the country, everything. I think, I've noticed it in our dog, actually, that she isn't grumpy, but she's just not as joyful as she was. And, I mean, I love it when stories tell us things that we all know. You know, yes, animals are not as lively and joyful when they're older than they're younger.
How old's your dog now?
Good question, I've completely forgotten. I think she is coming up to 5.
Oh, she's not even old.
No.
Oh,
but
she could get a lot grumpier then.
She was very Tiggerish and, enthusiastic, and now she's just a bit more... Maybe we're not treating her well enough. I think we are. She's in a loving home.
Maggie isn't grumpy, is she? How old's Maggie now?
16.
Maggie's 16 and she's not grumpy.
No, she's deaf and lame and whatever, so she probably can't hear or do anything about
Own little world.
Now, I'm not sure what we're supposed to say about... let's do the superbug story. Sensual superbug cure being stifled by NHS red tape. Now, this was a First World War treatment, Norman, we're talking about here.
This is a hugely complicated story, I have to say, to try and summarise in about 30 seconds. But essentially, superbugs, which are hard to treat because of their immunity to antibiotics, are the problem here, and they affect about 52,000 people a year in the UK, so there's an issue with that. There's some potential answer from something called bacteriophages, known as phages, which are bacteria-killing viruses that inject their own DNA into a bacteria to seize control of the cell and produce more phages until the bacteria burst. You following me so far?
No.
That's what the answer is. And getting hold of these phages, P-H-A-G-E-S, is a challenge ahead. But because they're not a licensed medicine in the UK and there's no phase from the UK, it can't be provided to an NHS patient unless it reaches good manufacturing practice standard, but there's no facility for phages in the UK, and therefore they have to come from abroad and have to be approved by some bit of the NHS. So it's all rather complicated and bureaucratic, and that's the story essentially in the paper. So I think what the paper's getting at, the Telegraph here, is can we streamline the NHS to make sure that what is available somewhere in the world can be used to benefit people?
OK. OK, gentlemen, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. We'll see you again at 25 to, what is that, 8? Would it be the next time round? 7?
25 to 7. Yeah, 7:40.
Very thing.
Exactly that.
28. Here's the weather.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Same again today compared with yesterday. It's dry for most, some brighter spells here and there, but it will be windy in the far north later. For the time being, rain and wind staying away, but for much of the UK it's a misty start to the day. Any early fog will lift, and then there's going to be variable amounts of cloud floating here and there. You'd be lucky to catch some cloud breaks in the south, whilst central and northeast mainland Scotland faring best for some sunshine. Wherever you are, though, it's relatively mild, 15 to 17 Celsius. A little colder for North Scotland, not as cold as it's going to get by Friday. And at this stage, mostly fine. But heading into the evening, the first signs of a change for Shetland. Outbreaks of rain turning up, increasing breeze, that wind picking up also for the Outer Hebrides. But it's staying clear for much of Aberdeenshire into Fife, as well as the central belt. Now, for Northern Ireland, a lot of cloud around, but as you can see, there are some cloud breaks further south across England and Wales. They're going to come and go through the day. There will be a large amount of cloud still remaining. That means on Wednesday nights, where we keep the cloud, it's going to stay mild and it's not going to be misty. But there is an increased chance of some breaks in the cloud across southern parts in particular, and as a result there'll be a few fog patches first thing and temperatures will dip into these single figures. Meanwhile, it's increasingly windy for the far north and northwest of Scotland, with outbreaks of rain turning up, and it is a breezy day on Thursday. Eastern parts of Scotland and the far north could see gusts of 50 or 60 miles an hour. And it's increasingly damp over western Scotland with a lot of low cloud. The wettest weather, though, will be for Shetland and Orkney, also the windiest weather. Further south, lighter winds, mostly dry, and again, some cloud breaks coming and going, so some brighter spells in the south, 14 or 15 Celsius.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Lincolnshire, the A18 is closed in both directions along the Kingsway in Scunthorpe after an accident. It's closed between Scotter Road and the A159 at the Queensway roundabout. The A1 in Nottinghamshire is partly blocked by a shed load at the turn for the A46 at Newark. On the M1 in Bedfordshire, the inside lane's closed southbound where a van's broken down. And a mile before junction 12, the Toddington and Flitwick turn, with delays towards there not helped by roadworks. In London, Hackney Road is closed eastbound off the A10 Shoreditch High Street for emergency water main repairs. On the M25 in Kent, the inside lane's closed anti-clockwise just before junction 5 for the M26 after an accident. And on the M26, it's taking nearly half an hour in queues approaching the M25 there because of roadworks. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. First, we'll give you £20,025 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you £5,000 to spend on all of your Christmas presents, with a further £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. You'll get it all in time for the big day. For your chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good morning. The biggest budget in a generation.
Well, after months of rumours and build-up, the first female Chancellor in history will finally reveal all in a matter of hours.
Rachel Reeves will use Labour's first budget in over a decade to shape the political agenda for years to come.
Now, throughout the morning, we'll be joined by you as we get to grips with what all of this means to you, the British public.
But is Budget Day being overshadowed? The teen accused of the Southport murders is charged with separate terror offences.
Bye-bye Rishi. The former Prime Minister has his final PMQs today as Conservative leader. In 20 minutes, we'll be speaking to Shadow Leader of the House, Chris Philp.
Kamala Harris makes her case to America from the White House as Donald Trump speaks from Mar-a-Lago. Is it enough for either to power ahead in those extremely tight polls?
Prince William gets personal in his homelessness campaign. What might tonight's episode on TV reveal?
Another fine day for many of us, although we keep a lot of cloud cover. Meanwhile, it turns increasingly windy in the far north ahead of Halloween. I'll have the full forecast coming up soon.
Hello there, very good morning to you on this Wednesday morning. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
And what are folks saying today, Ellie?
Well, Marie says, my husband and I own a small family farm, feed store and cafe just outside Wimborne in Dorset. We employ 8 members of staff, and this will mean that we have the following choices after the budget today. We cut hours for staff and we cover more hours ourselves. Currently, we already work 50 hours plus per week and we only take home £7.50 an hour. Or we increase our prices of animal feed that we sell and we increase our prices in our cafe. And that's what you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
It all gets handed on, doesn't it, to the working person?
Yeah. Brian says, listening to Eamonn's summary of politicians today, the problem with them today is that they're all straight out of university. And the politicians of the Wilson and Thatcher era lived through the war, worked for a living and had to go without due to rationing, and they experienced hard times.
And Warren says it's obvious that Labour have been releasing budget information to the media in order to dilute the horror today. All that's been achieved is anxiety and depression for millions of British people, bringing reduced confidence when still not recovered from Brexit, COVID, Ukraine and the political upheaval in the Middle East.
OK.
Wow.
Let us know what you think throughout the morning. There it is. Have your say, and that's how you do it. History will be made today as the Chancellor hands down Labour's first budget in 15 years and becomes the first woman ever to do so.
Well, when the Chancellor delivers her announcement at 12:30 today, she'll likely promise to invest, invest, invest.
However, Labour's big day has been overshadowed by the news that the suspected Southport attacker, Axel Rudy Cabana, has been separately charged with offences under the Terrorism Act.
Well, our political correspondent, Adam Cherry, joins us now. Very good morning to you, Adam. And looking across the front pages today, you wouldn't even know that a budget is taking place.
Yeah, it's absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? With the news of the Southport suspects, terror charges coming in at about 5 o'clock yesterday. The government says that this was not a deliberate move on their part. They insist that the change of the trial date and the announcement of those terror charges is entirely in the hands of the Crown Prosecution Service, the CPS. So any suggestion, as some of the Conservative members of Parliament have said, is that this is somehow being trailed deliberately in time with the budget, they're pushing back on that and saying that is not the case. But let's talk about that budget because, as you said, it's a big one. It's the first Labour budget since 2010, and there's quite a lot of tax rises and, as they put it, difficult spending decisions to come. On taxes, now we've heard a lot about working people and working people being protected. The Prime Minister yesterday telling his cabinet that working people's pay slips will be protected. So what that means is if you look at your pay slip, if you're on PAYE, you should not see any changes immediately next month. So national insurance, income tax and VAT should all stay the same. However, remember that £22 billion black hole the government says it needs to fill? How are they going to do it? Well, the biggest measure will be through national insurance employer contributions. That could rise between 1% and 2%. If it rises to 2%, that will fill about £15 billion for that black hole. There's not quite enough. There's not quite 22 billion for those keeping up with the difficult maths here. So that means there's going to be others. Capital gains tax, inheritance tax. Is there going to be a tax on gambling companies? Fuel duty, that's been kept the same for 14 years under the Tory government. Will that finally rise? Beer duty, will that go up? So there are a whole slew of measures here which could be really tough for businesses and then in time for workers. They have tried to soften the blow a little bit. Yesterday they announced that the national living wage will go up to £12.21. For full-time workers, that means you'll have about £1,400 extra in your pocket. For the national minimum wage, those 18 to 21, that will go up as well, about £2,500 a year. So that, again, is to soften the blow. But make no mistake, this is a big tax, big spend budget.
Point, isn't it, Adam? I mean, trying to soften the blow. We're hearing this very upbeat tone from Rachel Reeves at the moment, talking about an economy that is growing, wanting to create wealth and opportunity for more. But that is a stark difference from the messaging that we've been hearing from ministers recently, which has, let's be honest, been bleak.
Yeah, there has been a slight softening of the language. Throughout the last 3 months, we've heard about these tough decisions from Keir Starmer directly. Earlier this week, he made a similar pitch. But as you say, they are trying to create this impression that the sunlit uplands will come, not tomorrow, but as Keir Starmer said in the Daily Mirror earlier this week, in 5 years' time. So that's the gamble. They want to say you should have more money in your pocket in 5 years' time. They want to grow the economy. The way they're going to do that is by investing. So they're going to lift their spending rules are going to change, so they'll have more headroom by changing their fiscal rules. They can borrow more, up to 50 billion. That's not a target, but it does mean that they will lift the headroom there. So again, a slight change in language because I think they feel like they've overdone it slightly. So perhaps they're trying to reel it back in and try not to lose too much support, particularly after the cut to winter fuel allowance.
Okay, Adam Cherry, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Well, Archie says this budget is going to be terrible. Pensioners hit, people with medium and small businesses hit. And Elaine has been in touch saying Freddie is right. Rishi is going to be vindicated. Labour lied. They made a black hole as an excuse to tax everything and then borrowed loads for Miliband's silly green scheme. Do keep those views coming in.
The suspect accused of murdering 3 young girls in the Southport stabbing attacks this year is facing 2 new charges.
Yes, Axel Rudikabana is now charged with making the biological toxin ricin and having an Al-Qaeda training manual for potential terrorism preparation.
The charges are separate to those over the killings of the girls. Police are not treating the stabbings as an act of terrorism. Our Home and Security editor Mark White with this.
Well, 3 months on from the deadly Southport attack, a very significant development in this case with these 2 new charges laid against the key suspect, Axel Rudicabana. The charges relate to the production of the deadly toxin ricin and also possessing an Al-Qaeda terror manual. This is what the Merseyside Chief Constable said a little earlier.
The additional charges are the production of a biological toxin, namely ricin, contrary to Section 1 of the Biological Weapons Act 1974, and possession of information, namely a PDF file entitled Military Studies in the Jihad Against the Tyrants, the Al-Qaeda Training Manual, likely to be useful to a person committing or preparing to commit an act of terrorism, contrary to Section 58 of the Terrorism Act 2000.
Well, the Merseyside Chief Constable is urging calm amongst people in Merseyside as they absorb the news about these 2 new charges facing Axel Rudicabana. He will appear via video link at Westminster Magistrates Court in West London tomorrow.
Now, the Prince of Wales's new documentary aiming to end homelessness is back on telly tonight.
That comes as he launches his ambitions, and it's an ambitious 5-year programme, Homewards, which aims to make rough sleeping a thing of the past.
Well, the documentary has also reportedly been picked up by Disney+, making it available to international audiences from Friday.
But could this be the start of a royal streaming war pitching him against his brother Harry on Netflix?
Well, joining us now is editor of Majesty magazine, Ingrid Seward. Good to see you this morning, Ingrid. So for those who didn't catch the first programme, what did we hear from the Prince in that first programme? What do you think we'll expect to hear tonight?
Well, certainly William is absolutely set on this idea that within 5 years, he's going to be able to prevent homelessness. And he's wonderfully enthusiastic, and he feels that it's quite the wrong thing for this century to have people that are homeless. But there's always been homelessness, and there probably always will be. But what William is aiming to do is build sustainable housing, and I think he is absolutely going to do some of that on his Duchy of Cornwall lands. So he is giving of himself, as well as just standing there and preaching about it. He's actually getting deeply involved, which is what William is so good at.
We know that this means so much to him, doesn't it? I mean, he is so passionate about this as a cause, as you say. Do you think he wants this to be his life's work? Do you think this is what he wants himself to be remembered for?
Well, I think he's got, this is one of his main projects, along with the Earthshot Prize, which is all about the climate change and how to deal with it. So homelessness, climate change are his, for the moment anyway, his 2 main projects. But he's always been interested in homelessness. We saw how he went and slept rough. Admittedly, he had, his bodyguard with him, but he has experienced it. He's sold the big issue. So he's not just talking about it, he's actually trying to get properly involved, which of course is what he did as an 11-year-old boy when his mother took him to a homeless shelter.
Here in that first programme, didn't we, a mention of Prince Harry. Do you think we could see an olive branch in the second episode?
Well, Prince Harry was with him when Diana took them both to the shelter. I don't think it was the first time, I think it was the second time. And so it would be very odd if he didn't mention Prince Harry. It would be like he was really wiping him off the face of the earth. But I don't see this as a reconciliation, not at this moment. I think there's too much going on in William's life to get involved with trying to reconcile with his brother, because it's not something you can just do over the telephone. It's got to be the right moment, and I really don't think that this is the right moment for William.
OK. Ingrid Seward, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much.
Just seeing in the papers today, there's a feature on an actress called Sophie Turner. Now, you may or may not know Sophie Turner. She had a role in Game of Thrones. I don't watch Game of Thrones. So
you should. You'd love it.
Well,
and she's great in it.
Yeah, well, she's great in an ITV drama called Joan, which is now on ITVX. Absolutely superb.
Is it good?
She is superb. She is absolutely superb. And that is her in Joan, where basically she's a single mum in this, and her child is at risk of being taken away from her unless she gets a job. So she gets a job as a thief.
Oh.
and she steals jewellery and things like that. But she dresses up quite a lot, you know, and she changes her look and her disguise and whatever and things. But she is a powerful actress. She's very good. And I was also looking today, there's a rich list of showbiz people in the country, and she sits well in the middle of that, earning £8.3 million a year.
Not too shabby.
So she's doing something right, isn't she? But she's a marvellous actress, and I just wanted to say that to you. You know, when you're looking for something to stream, something to watch on TV, Joan on ITVX, you will not be disappointed. Very,
Thank
very
you.
good.
I need
Sophie
a new
Turner.
programme to watch. Thank you very much.
OK.
I'll have to check that out.
Let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom. This is what we've got for you. Kamala Harris has made her closing argument ahead of the general election in America on Tuesday. The Democrat candidate made her case at the same place Donald Trump spoke from shortly before the White House riots.
We know who Donald Trump is. He is the person who stood at this very spot nearly 4 years ago and sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol to overturn the will of the people in a free and fair election.
2 people have been taken to hospital after a fire broke out overnight at the UK's nuclear submarine base in Cumbria. Locals have posted pictures online showing a building at the shipyard on fire, which reportedly began just before 1 o'clock this morning. Cumbria Fire and Rescue Services have encouraged people to stay away from the area.
Flash floods have wreaked havoc across eastern and southern parts of Spain. Several bodies have been found. The exact number of deaths yet to be made public, though. Rescue efforts have continued overnight. Local media in Valencia is reporting hundreds of people could still be trapped.
Now, I was reading this morning that parts of the UK could experience snow in the next 2 weeks.
Get out of it.
Yeah, because it's very mild at the moment, 17 degrees or so, but yeah.
Even though we're in wintertime.
I know,
business
but we could see snow on the ground in the next 2 weeks in the papers today.
Do you like snow?
I love snow. Don't like going out in it. I like watching it. What about you?
I would be the same as you. I like looking at it, but not experiencing it.
I feel like in this country, all you need is a single flake. Snowflake, and the whole country comes to a
grinding
halt.
Let's
so
see
it's
what
not
it's
too good
doing
for us.
today. Aidan McGivern, morning.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Same again today compared with yesterday. It's dry for most, some brighter spells here and there, but it will be windy in the far north later. For the time being, rain and wind staying away, but for much of the UK, it's a misty start to the day. Any early fog will lift, and then there's going to be variable amounts of cloud floating here and there. You'd be lucky to catch some cloud breaks in the south, whilst central and northeast mainland Scotland faring best for some sunshine. Wherever you are, though, it's relatively mild, 15 to 17 Celsius. A little colder for North Scotland, not as cold as it's going to get by Friday. And at this stage, mostly fine. But heading into the evening, the first signs of a change for Shetland. Outbreaks of rain turning up, increasing breeze, that wind picking up also for the Outer Hebrides. But it's staying clear for much of Aberdeenshire into Fife, as well as the Central Belt. Now, for Northern Ireland, a lot of cloud around. But as you can see, there are some cloud breaks further south across England and Wales. They're going to come and go through the day. There will be a large amount of cloud still remaining. That means on Wednesday nights, where we keep the cloud, it's going to stay mild and it's not going to be misty. But there is an increased chance of some breaks in the cloud across southern parts in particular, and as a result there'll be a few fog patches first thing and temperatures will dip into these single figures. Meanwhile, it's increasingly windy for the far north and northwest of Scotland with outbreaks of rain turning up, and it is a breezy day on Thursday. Eastern parts of Scotland and the far north could see gusts of 50 or 60 miles an hour. And it's increasingly damp over western Scotland with a lot of low cloud. The wettest weather there will be for Shetland and Orkney, also the windiest weather. Further south, lighter winds, mostly dry, and again, some cloud breaks coming and going, so some brighter spells in the south, 14 or 15 Celsius.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, here's that nice part of the morning where we offer to pay for your entire Christmas, that and even more.
Yeah, here's all the details that you need.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. First, we'll give you £20,025 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you £5,000 to spend on all of your Christmas presents. Christmas lunch, that's on us too. With a further £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. And the best news, you'll get it all in time for the big day. For your chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2 or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck indeed. Now, do stay with us. Still to come is Rishi Sunak's last PMQs as Conservative leader. Find out how he's planning to say goodbye next.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What we'd like to do now is to talk to the Shadow Leader of the House of Commons, Chris Philp, on a very big day, the budget being announced. And we go to Chris now, and he's going to talk to us from outside Parliament. Chris, good morning to you.
Good morning, Eamonn.
What sort of situation, if this was to be a Conservative budget, what would you be going for or going on or concentrating on that Labour is not?
Well, we certainly wouldn't be imposing massive tax rises on British businesses and, as a consequence of that, on British workers as well. We've seen those warnings from the CBI and the Institute of Directors this morning and many other business groups saying that Labour's planned tax increases will hit workers in the pocket, they'll destroy jobs and they will push some businesses overseas. Those are certainly things that a Conservative administration, had it been elected, wouldn't do. I think what is going to really make people angry about today's budget is that essentially Labour will break all of those manifesto promises and it will become painfully clear that Labour had lied to the British public in order to win that election a few months ago, because they fought saying that none of their plans needed big tax increases, and it turns out that is completely untrue.
But Chris, you know they will say there was this big black hole and we didn't know it existed and we've got to do something for the good of the country to plug it. Would you not have plugged it?
Well, I think this whole black hole thing has been comprehensively debunked. About half of the supposed amount relates to above-inflation public sector pay rises without any conditions attached to them, which the current Labour government decided to give after the election. That was their choice. They can hardly blame that on a previous administration. And of course, you manage pressures in the financial year the whole time. There's nothing different about that. And I think Jeremy Hunt's plans that he set out last March in his final budget had day-to-day spending rising by 1% over inflation across the next 5 years. So I think this black hole stuff is complete nonsense. We've got inflation down to 2%. It's now even lower than 2%. The economy was growing the fastest in the G7 for the first half of this year. Unemployment was half, 4%. It's half what it was when the last Labour government left office. So these claims, I think, are pretty much, nonsense. Labour planned all along to do what socialist governments always do, which is increase borrowing, increase spending and increase taxes. They just didn't have the honesty to say that to the British public during the election. Instead, they lied, saying that their plans did not require tax increases when they knew all along that they did, and now they're actually implementing them.
You can sense the frustration from yourself. I'm sure we're going to sense the frustration from Rishi Sunak today. His final PMQs as Tory party leader. He'll be sat there throughout the budget this afternoon as well. It won't be lost on him that this could have been a Tory budget. This could have been Jeremy Hunt delivering his final budget today. You decided not to do that. You decided to go early to the polls. Do you think Rishi Sunak regrets that decision now?
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure if he regrets it or not. Clearly, the result in the election was pretty bad, with Labour winning so many seats. Something, we did warn about during the election campaign, that if people, for example, voted Reform, for instance, who might ordinarily vote Conservative, it would hand Labour a landslide, and that is sadly what happened. But look, there's no point in looking backwards or having regrets. We now need to take the fight to Labour and expose the fact they lied to the British public and hold them to account. You've got business groups are saying that this budget's going to destroy jobs and drive businesses either out of the country or cause wages to be lower. We need to now take the fight to Labour. We're going to have a new leader in just a few days' time to do that. So we need to look to the future, I think, rather than to the past.
You say you want to expose Labour, you say you want to hold them to account, you say you want to take the fight to the Labour Party. Why then did you not have your new leader in place for this budget? Have you missed a trick here? I know there was a short debate about it at the Tory party conference, but it was decided against. But there's been so many messaging mistakes from Labour in these first few weeks that they've had in power, from the winter fuel debacle to the Chagos Island, Sue Gray controversy. Has it been a failure on your party's behalf to have no effective opposition? We've had budget stories all over the papers in the past few weeks and very few interventions from the Tories at all.
Well, I think the leadership timing was fixed before the budget date was announced. But I think actually, we have been, despite the fact that Rishi is acting as interim leader, we have, I think, been quite effective at holding Labour to account, which is one of the reasons why their poll ratings have tanked so catastrophically. I think Keir Starmer's now on minus 36%, which following a general election is the fastest fall in history. And as you say, they've done some catastrophically bad things. I mean, stripping impoverished pensioners of their winter fuel payment, Keir Starmer loading up on freebies, £100,000, getting somebody, Lord Ali, to pay for his suits, giving away in fact, not just giving away the Chagos Islands, paying Mauritius to have the Chagos Islands, and then that ridiculous story last week where they're going to be discussing paying reparations to the Caribbean countries for things that happened hundreds of years ago, which in my view is totally absurd, and they shouldn't even be discussing it. So and now we're going to see massive tax rises imposed on businesses because Labour lied during the election campaign. So mistake after mistake, as you say. But I think we have held them to account. We're going to continue doing that. And the British public, I think, have probably regretting a little bit the result of the election, which is why Keir Starmer's ratings have gone down so badly. They're, like I say, they're down to minus 36% now.
Yeah, well, fighting talk from you there, Chris. And what about your own leader? Who's going to be next? You were supporting Kemi Badenoch, but Kemi went very quiet after the GBNews debate. Where is she? What's the strategy there?
Well, I mean, Kemi's been out and about doing lots of interviews. I think she was out at the weekend. In fact, I think she was on GBNews, wasn't she, on Sunday, talking to Camilla. And she's been talking to lots and lots of media outlets. Look, I hope Kemi wins, but whoever wins, whether it's Kemi or Robert, I'll certainly be working my hardest to support the new leader and take the fight, as I said, take the fight to Labour. But look, I've voted for Kemi already, and I hope she makes it.
Good man. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us today. We'll leave it there. Thank you.
Well, at GB News, we love to hear what you think. So every day we'll be running our poll of the day. And today we're asking...
Well, this is... I'm laughing at this because I could predict the outcome of this one. Rachel Reeves, right? OK. Do you trust Rachel Reeves to put more pounds in your pocket?
Yes, well, we'll be bringing you the live results throughout the day, so make sure you stay tuned. The final result will be announced later in Martin Daubney's show.
Can I put money on that result? Can we lay a bet on it somewhere, whatever? But anyway, if you want to look at the polls that we've done, latest polls, news, how to vote, you go to gbnews.com/poll.
Coming up, we're finding out what some of you want in today's budget. This is GB News Breakfast with Eamonn and Ellie.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Aberdeenshire, the A90 is closed each way off the A948 to Ellen after an accident causing queues. In Lincolnshire, the A18 is closed each way along the Kingsway in Scunthorpe off the A159 Queensway roundabout after an accident. In Greater Manchester, the A57 Regent Road is partly blocked eastbound just after Oldfield Road at Salford with queues from the M602 at Trafford Park. The A1 in Nottinghamshire is partly blocked by a shed load at the A46 turn at Newark. The A1 in Cambridgeshire is blocked northbound just before the Sibson turn-off near Peterborough, causing queues. There are delays of up to half an hour to trains between Birmingham New Street and Coventry because of overhead line problems. In London, Hackney Road remains closed eastbound off the A10 Shoreditch High Street for emergency repairs.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Breakfast. It's 7:34. Now, what could the budget today mean for the pounds in your pockets? Well, let's speak now to professional landlord Cyan Astley and former teacher Baz Ramaya, who join us now. Very good to see you both this morning. And Cyan, let's start with you. You're a full-time landlord, aren't you? How are you feeling ahead of the budget today?
Oh, I mean, I was nervous a few weeks ago before Labour got in, and now, yeah. Do you know, I count myself as a self-employed person more than a professional landlord. I'm a grafter. I've been self-employed since I was 26, nearly 30 years now. And I feel like the self-employed have been absolutely hammered and insulted and disrespected by this government. And I think that's an astonishing way to start a term.
This is in part this definition of a working person that appears to have got narrower and narrower as the weeks have gone on.
I think it's funny, isn't it? It's, are they making it up as they go along, or is this a deliberate ideology? And either way, it's terrible. Either way, it's terrible. To insinuate that I think 30% of landlords are professional landlords, and to insinuate they're not working people. I work 7 days a week, 365 days a year, always there for my tenants, have a great relationship with them. To insinuate that you're somehow not working is astonishing, really. There's 170 pieces of legislation we juggle. You know, we're supposed to be responsible landlords, giving decent homes to people, maintaining them, working on them constantly. How is that not work?
Baz, let's bring in you at this point. How are you feeling ahead of the budget today?
I think one of the things I'm excited to see is a policy Labour have been trailing for some time, which is the introduction of VAT on private school fees. Now, we know that this is a policy that is very popular, including among Conservative voters. And we know also that this is a privilege and a luxury that the wealthiest in our country have enjoyed for too long, is not having to pay VAT on private school fees. So this is an excellent way for the government to raise about £1.6 billion to put into our ailing state school education system to make sure that system is really world class.
But are you concerned, Baz, as a teacher, about the influx of children whose parents cannot afford the VAT on fees, those additional fees, and they will be putting those children into the state sector, an influx of children in the state sector? Would you be concerned about the provisions that will be put in place for them?
I think this is an area where I'm not that concerned, because if we look at recent history, increases in private school fees have not led to this mass exodus into the state sector. Now, private school fees have been increasing year on year, well ahead of inflation. They've actually gone up as much as 50% since 2010. And the number of children in private schools has not changed. It's still 7% of the population of children who are in private school fees. So it doesn't look to me if we look at the data, like we're going to have this big exodus into the state sector.
Do you have concerns then about children with special needs, children with disabilities, whose parents have decided to send them to private school because they will get special care, they'll often get one-on-one time, they'll have the smaller class sizes. If they are then forced to put that child into the state sector, that they would just be swallowed up by those much larger class sizes?
Naturally, this was the first area of concern for many people in the education sector. And this is something that the Labour government have said they're going to protect children who have an EHCP, an education healthcare plan, in place against. So if a child has a diagnosed special educational need, then they are going to be exempt from this this increase in VAT. So this is something that the government have thought about, and that's something that all of us in the education sector are pleased that the government has thought about.
Sian, what's your biggest concern about what we're going to hear from Rachel Reeves this afternoon? Do you think we've heard it all, or do you think there could be some more surprises to come?
Well, there's been a huge amount of criticism about how much we have heard when we shouldn't have done, hasn't there? Do you know, for me, it's the general gist of things. It's the feeling out there in the country, and all the self-employed people I speak to on a daily basis, whether it's tradesmen, even tenants, other self-employed. It's that feeling that we're not being encouraged to do well. You're not being encouraged to be sensible, to save, to invest. So somehow that's a bad thing. So for me, more than the detail even of the budget, more than the percentage points and the pound notes, it's the essence of it. It's where is the encouragement to people to do well, to strive, to work harder. And I think that's kind of just feels like it's all evaporated. I was talking to somebody yesterday morning who just wants to leave the country. Is a tradesman who just wants to leave the country. So many people are just saying, what's the point? What's the point? I mean, if they put up capital gains tax, you know, so many people have been dragged into that higher tax bracket, and they think about selling businesses or selling properties they've worked really hard to develop and to better. And then the government just takes 50% of it. And you start to feel like, what's the point? And that's a terrible way for the country to feel.
Baz, what do you make of that? I mean, the Labour Party would, of course, say that they have inherited a dreadful situation. We know about this £22 billion black hole that we've heard so much about. They would say that we've had the highest tax burden since 1948, left by the previous government, and there's a 60-year high in government debt levels. So they would say there is no time for positive messages. This is the time for difficult decisions. Is that something that you support?
I think there's always been a good case for increasing for income tax rates to be equal to capital gains tax rates. It commands a lot of popular support, including among Conservative voters, and estimates suggest that it could raise as much as £20 billion. Now, that £20 billion can be put to fantastic use in rebuilding infrastructure in our NHS, in our schools, in our mental health services, in children's social care. And all of those things are essential to do if we want our economy to grow. We cannot have an economy that grows when we have record numbers of people signed off long-term sick from work because they can't get the healthcare that they need. We cannot have a world-class economy when children are not coming into the workplace with the skills that they need because of our ailing education system. So I see tax increases as a key way that the government can raise money necessary to put into the public services, necessary to drive that economic growth that we all want.
So Baz sounds very positive about the budget this afternoon, or a realist, you might say, Sian, that tough decisions need to be made for the future growth of this country. In your dream world, what would you like to see happen this afternoon? What support would you like to see?
I think it's good. It's a bit of a public sector mentality, isn't it, though, to just do tax grabs. And I think that for me, good household management is the same as good country management. It's about more efficiency, more productivity, less waste, less bureaucracy. Where is the talk about that? It's not just always about taking tax from people, hardworking people, and pumping it into big public sector organisations. Sometimes it's about making hard decisions on streamlining, not just privatising. I'm not talking about that in any way. So I think probably Baz and I might agree on some of those issues. But it is about making hard decisions in other ways rather than just taxing people.
OK. Sian, Baz, good to speak to you both this morning. Thank you very much indeed. You will have a view, gbnews.com/yours say. What would you like to see in the budget this afternoon? All to come at 12:30. And still to come here, Freddie Gray and Norman Baker will be with us going through the papers. That's next.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Catherine Richards and Jake Singleton-Hill featured on the reality show Love is Blind.
Well, Catherine and Jake are joining us now in the studio for Saturday Morning Live. Thank you very much for joining us. And this is perhaps not the end result that people might have thought that they'd be seeing at this point, because you were both on the show, but you didn't fall in love in the pods, did you?
No, we didn't. I rejected him.
You guys look great together.
Yeah.
Very happy as well. It seemed like you guys were really strong, and it almost seemed like Freddie, after he admitted to you that he'd cheated in the past.
I actually respected the fact that he told me up front. I didn't even want to have that conversation, obviously. That was a conversation that we got told to talk about. And I respected his decision, but I think he felt that I was holding this grudge towards him that she really doesn't like, and which was not, and he knew this, because off camera we had many conversations where I was like, thank you for owning up, like, we can just move on from this. But if anything, I think he just felt guilty the whole entire time, and he put that on me, which is fine, but yeah, there's obviously a lot that people don't see.
So for viewers who don't know, Love is Blind is where you go and seek love and romance, but you don't see who you're speaking to, right?
No.
So, Jake, why did you go on the show?
My parents actually met in a very similar way. So my stepdad was texting my mum. He'd basically stolen the number off of a friend because the friend had met my mum in Blackpool, and they were texting for like 6 months. They'd never met. So that premise of how they got together and the marriage that they had was stunning. And to build a relationship not based on looks before you met, I just found that just incredible.
So do you believe in that concept? Is it lust or love at first sight?
It's weird.
It's a bit of both.
I think, it's definitely a bit of both. And I always say, as you get older, your looks will change, but your personality will stay the same.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back.
Well, good to see you again. The biggest budget in a generation. After months of rumours and build-up, the first female Chancellor in history will reveal what she's got in store in a matter of hours.
OK, well, we're going to be going through the papers, Norman Baker and Freddie Gray, and we are actually having a budget-free zone, aren't we, for this set of papers. Norman, let's start with The Guardian, shall we? And an Israeli strike on flats in northern Gaza has killed at least 93
There's another
people.
terrible picture on the front page of The Guardian of the suffering that is going on here with people.
There is, and I wanted to include this because I think we mustn't forget about what's happening over there at the moment. And these 93 people are largely women and children who've been bombed in a block of flats, a residential block of flats, where people had been reallocated and redirected to these flats away from somewhere else, which was to be safe. The US State Department has called the strike, quote, a horrifying incident with a horrifying result. And I have to say that the Israeli government, I think, is out of control. They're shooting at UN peacekeepers. They're starving people to death in the Gaza Strip. That's been condemned by the Americans as well. The US ambassador to the UN says that they've rejected the Israeli efforts to starve Palestinians in Jabalia or anywhere else in Gaza. You've got the UN aid agency being called a terrorist organisation. Over 40,000 Palestinians have been killed, many of them women and children. You've got the Israeli settlers in the West Bank out of control, and the Israeli forces are doing nothing about it. They're annexing Palestinian land that's been held by Palestinians for centuries. This is outrageous, and the West needs to step up. And what's happening is that President Biden and Keir Starmer are saying, don't do that. And the Israelis are paying no attention whatsoever. And the Israeli government is out of control. And the West needs to actually say, we're not going to send any more weapons to Israel. And you've got to behave in a way that's acceptable. Now, of course, we've had a terrible incident with the initial incident on October the 7th. And, of course, it's quite wrong that hostages have been taken. And all that is completely unacceptable. But it doesn't give the Israeli government carte blanche to behave in this way.
Freddie?
Norman's absolutely right to say we should talk about it more. It's awful what's happening there. I think, however, when I hear the US State Department condemning it and so on, you think, well, you're also funding it.
Yes.
So I think the talking out of both sides of their mouth from a democratic administration is the real scandal here. I think if Donald Trump is elected, he will be extremely pro-Israel. He will support Israel to the hilt, but you will know that he will support Israel to the hilt. And there'll be some clarity there, which is interestingly is why Arab Americans, a poll last week showed Arab Americans prefer Donald Trump to Kamala Harris. I think in terms of Israel, the real question is what is the long-term objective that they are trying to achieve? And that's where I think Norman might have a point where he says they are out of control. Because do we really think, they say they want to destroy Hamas, do we really think they're going to succeed in destroying Hamas? Do we really think they're going to succeed in destroying the terror threat that Israel face? Is this long-term sensible for Israel? I think perhaps the answer in Israel's best interest, which, you know, I support Israel, it's not in Israel's best long-term interest.
Let's talk about individuals being out of control now, Freddie. This is in the Commons, and a former Conservative MP before a parliamentary watchdog after committing brazen and drunken sexual misconduct.
It's another groping Tory. We've had a lot of them. This is Aaron Bell, who was Newcastle under Lyme, I think, was his seat, but he lost it. So he would have lost his seat, or he would have had to stand down had he not already lost his seat. So it's slightly a non-story, but it is indicative of a culture within the House of Commons, I would say, that has been allowed to develop. I don't think you need sort of particular legislation or anything to deal with it. You just want to hope that MPs can control their hands when they've had a bit to drink.
When you just think that wouldn't be a very big ask, would you, Norman?
No, at least this person was interested in someone else's seat, but that's part of the problem. I find it astonishing that a succession of MPs, largely Conservative, but not all Conservative, who, you know, one after the other have been charged or found guilty or reprimanded for these sorts of grouping offences. I don't know why they do it, to be honest with you.
I think it almost seems as if there's a licence to do it. You know, it's acceptable under the working conditions or the social conditions that exist.
I think it's a power thing. I mean, go back some decades. It's a power thing that MPs were terribly powerful, and they regard themselves as superior to to women in men's because we're mostly male MPs, but also to researchers and so on. And that some of that is still there, and it shouldn't be. But the thing is that we have a succession of these, but still more come out of the woodwork. They never seem to stop.
Norman, let's talk about a change to the rules of monopoly. This is reported in the Telegraph today, and it's about being white or being coloured or being anti-racist. Is Monopoly a racist game?
This is an incredible story, actually, I have to say. I'm reading this from the Mail. It's in Telegraph as well, but from the Mail. Children should be playing Monopoly to learn about racial privilege, councils claim. White players should be given more money, spend less time in jail, and also be given a head start on buying property to convey inequality and white supremacy. And this all, I'm not making this up, and this all comes from a document called How to Raise Anti-Racist Children, which was drawn up for the Barbie manufacturer Mattel in 2020, and it's been endorsed, or at least circulated, by Leicestershire County Council, Southampton City Council, Lambeth London Borough and the City of London Corporation, who apparently think this is a sensible way to go forward. I mean, for goodness sake, Monopoly is just a bit of fun, isn't it? Let's just enjoy it.
It's a wonderful example of how anti-racist thinking becomes racist. What they're saying is that white children should be given privileges on the Monopoly board.
Because they've got it in real life.
So that they learn that they already have privilege. Do we really think children are going to think that? Or do we really think children are going to think, oh, great, I have an advantage? White children are going to think, great, I have an advantage.
They're going to think, oh, no, I've landed on Mayfair and there's 4 houses there.
It's wonderfully stupid.
We've also heard it with nursery rhymes as well, though, haven't we? And mums and dads being told not to sing Bar Bar Black Sheep.
That's in the story as well, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
their
But it's
children.
steeped in white culture. And what a lot of nonsense that is as well.
What are you meant to sing instead?
Well, Bar Bar, I don't know, White Sheep, perhaps, I don't know.
Or rainbow sheep or something.
Wah wah white sheep. You can say wah wah white sheep as they play Monopoly with their privileges.
Well, you will have an opinion on that. gbnews.com/you'll say. Let us know what you think. Freddie, Melania. She spoke, didn't she, on the campaign trail for Donald Trump, her first and last speaking appearance.
Yes, I think Melania is the fascinating untold story within Trump world. They are clearly estranged, Donald and Melania, to a certain extent. But Trump people get very, very nervous when you ask them about it. There was this kiss on stage on Sunday that the world saw, rather awkward embrace between husband and wife. She had a book out this year, so she only seemed to get involved in the campaign when it was to promote her book. I think, I think Donald and her are not a normal, happy married couple in a normal sense. I think she is a good mother. She's looked after Barron very well. But for people who are interested in palace intrigue in Trump world, and for my sins I am, I think that's the story that will bubble away for if Trump is elected. Will bubble, and I expect if he's not elected, we might see a more formal separation.
And it is fascinating, isn't it, for an election that is based to a large degree on the topic of abortion, that Melania Trump came out as pro-choice in the run-up.
Yes, well, a lot of people thought that was a deliberate tactic, a deliberate signal from the Trumps that they were not as aligned with conservative Christian view of a lot of their voters. I suspect it's that Melania just wanted to do her own thing and she couldn't be stopped.
Well, there we go. We'll find out next week, Tuesday, as how it all turns out. Freddie and Norman, thank you very much. See you again in 45 minutes.
Now, there are rumours and reports of snow in the next 2 weeks, but not for now. It's quite mild, I believe. Aidan McGibbon's got all the details.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Same again today compared with yesterday. It's dry for most, some brighter spells here and there, but it will be windy in the far north later. For the time being, rain and wind staying away, but for much of the UK it's a misty start to the day. Any early fog will lift, and then there's going to be variable amounts of cloud floating here and there. You'd be lucky to catch some cloud breaks in the south, whilst central and northeast mainland Scotland faring best for some sunshine. Wherever you are, though, it's relatively mild, 15 to 17 Celsius. A little colder for North Scotland, not as cold as it's going to get by Friday. And at this stage, mostly fine. But heading into the evening, the first signs of a change for Shetland. Outbreaks of rain turning up, increasing breeze, that wind picking up also for the Outer Hebrides. But it's staying clear for much of Aberdeenshire into Fife, as well as the central belt. Now, for Northern Ireland, a lot of cloud around, but as you can see, there are some cloud breaks further south across England and Wales. They're going to come and go through the day. There will be a large amount of cloud still remaining. That means on Wednesday nights, where we keep the cloud, it's going to stay mild and it's not going to be misty. But there is an increased chance of some breaks in the cloud across southern parts in particular, and as a result there'll be a few fog patches first thing and temperatures will dip into these single figures. Meanwhile, it's increasingly windy for the far north and northwest of Scotland, with outbreaks of rain turning up, and it is a breezy day on Thursday. Eastern parts of Scotland and the far north could see gusts of 50 or 60 miles an hour. And it's increasingly damp over western Scotland with a lot of low cloud. The wettest weather there will be for Shetland and Orkney, also the windiest weather. Further south, lighter winds, mostly dry, and again, some cloud breaks coming and going, so some brighter spells in the south, 14 or 15 Celsius.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Aberdeenshire, the A90 is closed in both directions off the A948 to Ellen after an accident causing queues. The M18 Glasgow, there's a lane closed westbound where someone's broken down between junctions 15 and 16 from Townhead to Craighall, causing delays. The M602 in Greater Manchester is partly blocked eastbound by an accident between junctions 2 and 3 from Trafford Park to Eccles to the Regent Road roundabout, causing queues. In Lincolnshire, the A18 is closed each way along the Kingsway in Scunthorpe after an accident. The A1 in Nottinghamshire is partly blocked by a shed load at the A46 turn at Newark. The A1 in Cambridge is closed northbound just outside Peterborough from Old Walton to the Sibson turn-off after an accident causing delays. And in London, Hackney Road remains closed eastbound off the A10 Shoreditch High Street for repairs. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
We're giving you the chance to win everything you need to celebrate the festivities. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For your chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, the biggest budget in a generation.
After months of rumours and build-up, the first female Chancellor in history will finally reveal all in a matter of hours.
Well, with Rachel Reeves to use Labour's first budget in over a decade to shape the political agenda for years to come.
Well, throughout the morning, we'll be joined by you as we get to grips with what today means for the great British public.
In Budget Day, is Budget Day being overshadowed? The teen accused of the Southport murders now charged with separate terror offences.
Kamala Harris makes her case to America from the White House as Donald Trump speaks from Mar-a-Lago. Is it enough for either to power ahead in those extremely tight polls?
Another fine day for many of us, although we keep a lot of cloud cover. Meanwhile, it turns increasingly windy in the far north ahead of Halloween. I'll have the full forecast coming up soon.
Very nice to have you on board on this Wednesday morning, Budget Day. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Not much need to tell you that today history will be made as Rachel Reeves hands down Labour's first budget in 15 years. She becomes the first woman to do so.
Well, when the Chancellor delivers her announcement at 12:30, she'll likely promise to invest.
However, Labour's big day has been overshadowed by the news that the suspected Southport attacker, Axel Rudley Cabana, has been separately charged with offences under the Terrorism Act.
Well, our political correspondent Adam Cherry joins us now. And it is true to say, isn't it, Adam, that looking at the papers this morning, you wouldn't even know that a budget is taking place.
Yeah, good morning, guys. It's absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? That announcement of the Southport suspects' terror charges coming in at about 5 o'clock yesterday, and if you look at the front pages, as you say, it's all over what would be a front page coverage of the budget, given the size of these measures. Now, just briefly on that announcement, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, is saying not to speculate on this active case, not to prejudice it, and also saying that the government had no influence on the changing of the trial date to January or the announcement of those charges last night. Now, let's actually talk about that budget. So it's going to be a big tax rising budget. The biggest measure will be employer national insurance contributions. That will go up 1 or 2%, which should raise 15 to 20 billion pounds. Now, that's not quite the 22 or even 40 billion pound black hole that we've heard so much about from the Chancellor Rachel Reeves. So there are going to be some more tax rises. What are they going to be? Capital gains tax on the sale of shares. Inheritance tax is going to change as well. There might be something on fuel duty, on beer duty. So a whole slew of measures here, a huge package. Now, on the other side of the ledger, there will be some spending and some changes to the fiscal rules to allow for more spending and more borrowing, up to 50 billion pounds of headroom. That's not a target, it's headroom, so they won't go to that straight to that point, but it'll be spent on rail, on green energy, and so on. So, as I say, a huge package of measures, but also last night they're trying to soften the blow a little bit by saying that the national living wage will go up to £12.21. The national minimum wage for those between 18 and 21 will go up as well, raising about £2,500 a year for those on full-time employment. So we'll find out at 12:30. This is also Rishi Sunak's last budget and last appearance in the House of Commons as Tory leader, so he'll be responding to it. And then we'll find out who the new leader is on the 2nd of November.
Thank you, Adam. We'll leave it there. The 18-year-old accused of murdering 3 young schoolgirls in Southport and attempting to murder 10 others has also been charged with attempting to make a biological weapon using the deadly toxin ricin.
Yes, Axel Rudi-Cabana is also facing a second charge under the Terrorism Act for possessing an Al-Qaeda terror manual.
Well, GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White joins us now. There's a lot of sensitivity around this case and him being charged. He'll not appear in court until next January. But the main concern for the authorities is that the children will get a fair hearing and that nothing will impede the course of their trial.
Yes, and the sensitivity, understandably, is about anything that could prejudice the trial in some way, point to the guilt of an individual before they've actually been tried before a court of their peers. And that doesn't stop us, though, expressing some surprise at this announcement that came 3 months to the day after the horrific events at the Heart Space venue in Southport, with the death of these 3 young schoolgirls and, of course, the injury of 8 other schoolgirls along with 2 adults. And 3 months on came the surprise news that 2 other charges have been added to the indictment, one under the Biological Weapons Act. The manufacturing of the deadly toxin ricin, traces or elements of this ricin toxin were found at Axel Rudi-Cabana's home address. And the second is a terror charge relating to the downloading to a PDF of an Al-Qaeda training manual. And of course, the fact that these charges have come 3 months after the Southport attack has led to some concern being expressed by the 2 leadership candidates, for instance, for the Conservative Party, wondering why it's taken 3 months, because what we had confirmed to us at this news conference yesterday is that the ricin toxin was discovered within a day. It was confirmed to be ricin toxin within within a couple of days of the search having found this substance in Axel Radicabana's house, but 3 months later before we finally get a charge. That's not really been satisfactorily answered in terms of the time lag yet by the authorities, just the message out there that they don't want people to start speculating because of the fact that the case is very active at the moment, and they don't want to do anything that could prejudice this young man's trial. He is entitled to a fair trial at the end of the day.
Is he going to appear today at Westminster Magistrates Court? And if he is, what can we expect from that appearance?
Well, he'll appear at Westminster Magistrates Court via a video link, and it is, of course, to answer the 2 new charges that have been placed onto the indictment. There is another court of appearance, a plea and case management hearing that's scheduled for the 13th of November, but today will all be about these new charges, so we'll have to wait and see what that appearance is about. They're normally fairly straightforward and short-lived affairs, these initial magistrates court hearings.
OK, Mark White, thank you very much indeed.
Let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom on this Wednesday morning. Ahead of the budget, the Chancellor has announced minimum wage will rise by 6.7%. That means the average hourly rate for over 21s will be £12.21. Here's what the Chief Secretary to the Treasury has said.
National living wage will increase by nearly 7%, which for a full-time worker will mean an increase of over £1,400 a year.
2 people have been taken to hospital after a fire broke out overnight at the UK's nuclear submarine base in Cumbria. Locals have posted pictures online showing a building at the shipyard on fire. Cumbria Fire and Rescue Services have encouraged people to stay away from the area.
Flash floods have wreaked havoc across eastern and southern parts of Spain. Several bodies have been found. The exact number of deaths has yet to be made public. Rescue efforts have continued overnight. Local media in Valencia reporting hundreds of people could still be trapped. Gosh, before we start complaining about a little bit of rain or whatever it is, that's what it could be like. That's pretty awful.
Well, let's have a look at the situation where we are with Aidan McGibbon.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Same again today compared with yesterday. It's dry for most, some brighter spells here and there, but it will be windy in the far north later. For the time being, rain and wind staying away, but for much of the UK it's a misty start to the day. Any early fog will lift, and then there's going to be variable amounts of cloud floating here and there. You'd be lucky to catch some cloud breaks in the south, whilst central and northeast mainland Scotland faring best for some sunshine. Wherever you are though, it's relatively mild, 15 to 17 Celsius. A little colder for North Scotland, not as cold as it's going to get by Friday. And at this stage, mostly fine. But heading into the evening, the first signs of a change for Shetland. Outbreaks of rain turning up, increasing breeze, that wind picking up also for the Outer Hebrides. But it's staying clear for much of Aberdeenshire into Fife, as well as the central belt. Now for Northern Ireland, a lot of cloud around, but as you can see, there are some cloud breaks further south across England and Wales. They're going to come and go through the day. There will be a large amount of cloud still remaining. That means on Wednesday nights, where we keep the cloud, it's going to stay mild and it's not going to be misty. But there is an increased chance of some breaks in the cloud across southern parts in particular, and as a result there'll be a few fog patches first thing and temperatures will dip into these single figures. Meanwhile, it's increasingly windy for the far north and northwest of Scotland, with outbreaks of rain turning up, and it is a breezy day on Thursday. Eastern parts of Scotland and the far north could see gusts of 50 or 60 miles an hour. And it's increasingly damp over western Scotland with a lot of low cloud. The wettest weather there will be for Shetland and Orkney, also the windiest weather. Further south, lighter winds, mostly dry, and again, some cloud breaks coming and going, so some brighter spells in the south, 14 or 15 Celsius.
we'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed boiler repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, whatever the weather at Christmas will be like, we'll give you a warm front because we'll pay for your Christmas.
Yes, it's the Great British Giveaway. Here are all of the details that you need.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. First, we'll give you £20,025 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you £5,000 to spend on all of your Christmas presents. Christmas lunch, that's on us too. With a further £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. And the best news, you'll get it all in time for the big day. For your chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2 or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We'll take a break after that. How might the budget affect you? OK, let us know. We'll be talking about it next.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
You must be so proud of your daughter being so just amazingly brave and a model for other people who face illness.
I think we're proud of her all day, every day, and always have been. Liz has always given her all to anything she put her mind to, whether that was studying for her GCSE exams at school or whether it's been her photography and battling cancer. Liz never does anything by half, and we are so incredibly proud of her each and every day.
And Liz, I noticed a wonderful line from you saying that when you've got cancer, A-levels don't matter so much. That seems to me to be a very reasonable view to take and has given you then the chance to do these other amazing things that you will be doing more of in future with the London Ambulance Service. And I imagine many people will want to help you with your bucket list because they've now seen you and seen how brave you are.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we've already been overwhelmed by the responses and the support by so many people. I think when my mum originally posted the list, it received like 4,000 replies. It was insane, and still there's more. So from the bottom of our hearts, and especially mine, we just want to say thank you, because there's nothing that forces anyone to get in touch and say, hey, I have something you can do, pop over and do this or that, or it's just out of the generosity of their hearts. So thank you.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What could the budget mean for the pound in your pocket? That's the question we all want to know.
Well, let's speak now to pensioner Derek Brown and dairy farmer Sam Hanna, who join us this morning. Really good to see you both this morning. Derek, let's start with you, shall we? I mean, so much talk about pensioners in the run-up to this budget, obviously with winter fuel payments being scrapped. How are you feeling this morning?
A bit apprehensive, really, because my main theme has been, my main concern is to do with council tax and the fact that people with dementia only get two benefits. They get attendance allowance and council tax discount. And there's rumours going around that they were going to abandon the council tax single occupancy discount, which actually affects 250,000 people with dementia. That's my concern. Yes, it was a rumour. Yes, they're saying it may not go ahead. But will it or won't it? They've written to me saying they won't be putting it ahead for the moment. Well, that doesn't help me. They're saying they may not do it. But when they say things like for the moment, that can change in an instant. That's the main concern. And also the fact that they've increased the minimum wages. So the carers that we get to come, that's going to go up. The national insurance for the employers is going up. So when we have our carers, we have a carer that comes, we have carers come once a day. And I know I'm only paying them £25 an hour. Well, out of that, if the minimum wage has gone up to £12 odd, they've got to pay for their PPE, they've got to pay for the staff, for the staff supporting them, and they've got to pay for the management behind that and the national insurance. So that's got to go up as well. Not only for me, but all the 700,000 people who are caring for somebody at home with dementia.
I know. And Sam, what you highlight there is it speaks to the fear that a lot of people have, and it may not seem like much to some people, but it's a lot to people like you and so many people like you. And then, then we go to Sam. That was Derek. And Sam, for you, it is an invisible cost at the moment, because being a farmer, I think this is fascinating, that you in many ways, and people like you, could be asset rich and cash poor, and it could be costing you big time.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. As I say, my father's still living. If they bring in the inheritance tax, I get hit. I have a son who seems to be keen and interested in going on. 2 generations, it would wipe a farm out. There's nothing left. The investment we put in, yes, there's only a few thousand or tens of thousands of farmers, but it's the employment beyond our farm gate that we create that is the bigger picture.
So it is, Sam. I'll tell you this. Week after week, I interview politicians, and sometimes they pin their flag to the mast of farmers. They don't care about farmers. They don't care about where our food supplies come from and what it means. And basically, just to put this in plain English, if you were to hand your farm on to your son, are we saying that you would be penalised for it? It would be a cash penalty for you. Just explain to me sort of how much money that would cost, what we're talking about.
It would really be crippling. For me, as you said, we're asset rich, cash poor, and for us to hand over a farm to the next generation, to be crippled with inheritance tax, we would have to sell off land, make us less inefficient, to go forward for the next generation, when realistically we need all the land we have to farm and to make us efficient as efficient as we can be.
Sam, what support would you like to see for farmers in the budget?
Saying the minimum. Well, you hear of them bringing up the minimum wage for everybody else. You know, the minimum wage has gone up to over 20,000 a year for the average 35-hour week. You know, we have 35 hours done by a Wednesday afternoon. You know, we're doing twice them hours and probably still not getting the minimum wage.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have holiday pay, we don't have sick pay, all that there behind us.
And then, Sam, you know, there'll be another farming crisis, another food crisis, and the politicians will look and they'll say, oh, we need to support British farming, we need to buy British, when it'll be too late because there'll be just no farmers about.
Yeah, there'll be nothing left. You have a lot of these big companies, firms buying into land and property to make their greening look better, make their carbon offset look better when it doesn't work. We need all the land we have.
OK. OK, let's hear Derek now. Let's hear, you've had a chance to listen. Sam's got different problems than you, but they're as serious as you.
Yeah. Yeah, they are serious. But I mean, I'm concerned mostly about people with dementia. And there's so many things that they've got to cope with. We've got 14 different medications. Nobody with dementia has just got Alzheimer's. They've got loads and loads of other problems. Margaret's got incontinence. Most people with dementia finish up with incontinence. She's got diverticular disease, which means she's got another stomach disorder. She's got what's a recent diagnosis was of hypertension, which means that if you move her too quickly, she'll collapse. And that's why she finished up in hospital for 4 weeks. 4 weeks in hospital. And now, and you can't see her now, but now she can't walk. She's in a wheelchair. She's in a hospital bed. All because the care that's being provided is deficient. We're not able to give the full care. We have to stay, Margaret has to stay in hospital and wait for some carers to come up.
We hear what both of you are saying, and the thing is, Sam, I would look and say whether they take money from Derek and people like Derek, or they take money from farmers and people like you. What do they do with this money? I would just love to see. We're taking it of these guys, we're making them worse off, and here's how we're going to spend it. I'm sure you'll agree. I don't agree. What are they spending it on?
Well, the private sector's subsidising the public sector. You know, it's spent inefficiently in these banks, the hospitals, schooling. Everything's getting crippled by inefficiency within there. If they were running a business, it would be a whole lot different. They couldn't manage.
No, gentlemen, thank you both very, very much indeed. If they were running a business, it would be different. They couldn't manage, says Sam Hanna, and Sam Hanna is a dairy farmer from Northern Ireland. And I said that today. The trouble with these guys, they have no business experience, and it's all idealism. It's all, oh, this could happen, that could happen. Leave people alone. People are taxed to the hilt anyway. Leave them alone. Create wealth if you want to make the country better off. But penalising people, it's absolutely... I just think these politicians, they can act intelligent, they can act sincere, whatever. They don't have the ideas, they don't have the drive, they don't have the initiative. They're just not good enough. All of them.
When you hear from the likes of Derek and his wife Margaret and how difficult their day-to-day life is, I mean, they'll be listening very closely this afternoon to hear what Rachel Reeves has to say about the NHS, about social care. I'm going to put a question to you about the NHS. I don't know what the answer to this is, but does the NHS do too much for too many people? Should you look at the NHS and say the NHS does A, B, C, D and E, but that's it. It doesn't do anything else outside that. Because you could go on forever feeding the NHS and it still would never be enough. It's like a bottomless pit, isn't it? Or it feels that way. But you know, is that the way we should be? Is it? Or is it not? Give us your ideas, let us know what you think. Yeah, gbnews.com/yoursay, because we do love to hear what you think. And every day we're going to be running our poll of the day. And today we're asking... I know the answer to this. Do you trust Rachel Reeves to put more pounds in your pocket? Well, we will bring you the live results throughout the day, so make sure you stay tuned. All will be revealed in Martin Daubney's show a little bit later on this afternoon. OK. Please do that. Get in touch with us. Right, now, we're going to take a break, and still to come, Prince William talks about his homelessness campaign. What's happened to that? Where's it going? We'll tell you next.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Aberdeenshire, the A90 is closed each way off the A948 to Ellen after an accident causing delays. Trains have been stopped between Motherwell and Lockerbie because of an incident. In North Yorkshire, the A172 is partly blocked southbound by an accident on Martin Road at Grove Hill in Middlesbrough, causing queues. The M53 on Merseyside is partly blocked southbound by an accident between junctions 3 and 4 from Whitchurch to Bebington, causing delays. In Lincolnshire, the A18 is closed each way along the Kingsway in Scunthorpe after an accident. In South Yorkshire, the A63 A380 is partly blocked eastbound where Alloy's broken down towards junction 33 of the M1 at Catcliffe, causing queues. On the A1 in Cambridgeshire, there's a lane closed northbound after an accident just outside Peterborough between Orwalton and Sibson, causing delays. And on the M26 in Kent, it's taking nearly half an hour in westbound queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Prince William, the Prince of Wales, he's made a lot about homelessness, rightly so. And there's a new documentary on ITV tonight talking about what he is actually doing.
Yes, well, the Prince has an ambitious plan to end homelessness as part of his Homewards project.
So the programme has been picked up by Disney Plus as well. So here is the question. It'll go out to an international audience from Friday.
Well, earlier we spoke to editor of Majesty magazine, Ingrid Seward.
Is absolutely set on this idea that within 5 years he's going to be able to prevent homelessness. And he's wonderfully enthusiastic, and he feels that it's quite the wrong thing for this century to have people that are homeless. But there's always been homelessness, and there probably always will be. But what William is aiming to do is build sustainable housing, and I think he is absolutely going to do some of that on his Duchy of Cornwall lands. So he is giving of himself, as well as just standing there and preaching about it. He's actually getting deeply involved, which is what William is so good at. Homelessness, climate change are his, for the moment anyway, his two main projects. But he's always been interested in homelessness. We saw how he went and slept rough. Admittedly, he had, his bodyguard with him, but he has experienced it. He's sold the big issue. So he's not just talking about it, he's actually trying to get properly involved, which of course is what he did as an 11-year-old boy when his mother took him to a homeless shelter. Well, Prince Harry was with him when Diana took them both to the shelter. I don't think it was the first time, I think it was the second time. And so it would be very odd if he didn't mention Prince Harry. It would be like he was really wiping him off the face of the earth. But I don't see this as a reconciliation, not at this moment. I think there's too much going on in William's life to get involved with trying to reconcile with his brother, because it's not something you can just do over the telephone. It's got to be the right moment, and I really don't think that this is the right moment for William.
Ingrid Seward, what I'd say about homelessness is we talk about these budgets and what they're supposed to do. I could take a list of the things that we, the public, fund, and I'd say scrap, 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 forget that, no, And then you come to something that's really important, and you've got to think what's really important, and homelessness is a sin on all our souls. It really is. It is a bad, bad thing, and no one should be homeless, and we should be doing much more. And it helps society, it helps the individuals involved. And I think people sort of go, well, I know where my money's going for income tax or whatever tax it is, and therefore I can't really disagree with that. We're not all stupid, and, you know, people are quite reasonable sometimes about things. And I think they take money off you, you don't know where it's going to, and that creates a lot of discontent as well. But homelessness is an absolute disgrace.
And it's something you see. I mean, we all see, don't we, in our town centres, in our local communities.
We smell, we look, it's hideous in every aspect, and it's demeaning to people. And the drug situation as well, I would be big time on the drug situation. I've gone round various homeless shelters, and I'll tell you, the people in there, they actually have people giving them drugs and ambulances sitting outside dealing with it, because these people, they're incapable of doing anything because they're addicted to these drugs. And we've got to erase this curse of drugs from our society as well. But it is a bad, bad situation. There's no point closing our eyes and pretending it's not there, or someone else will deal with it, like Prince William. Good luck to him.
Yeah. But good on him for being so public about this and for making it his life's work. And he is passionate about it and using his own land to try and make a difference. So good on him. And that programme is tonight, 9 p.m, I believe. OK. Still to come, we've got what's making the news, what's in the papers, and we've got our panel to talk about it right after this.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Recruiters are warning that if you're not tech savvy, you could be missing out with your CV failing to make it through an AI-powered sifting process. So we've gone from sort of computer says no HR people ticking boxes to AI, right? Is that right?
Yes, well, this applies once you're in the job as well, as a recent report revealed that employees expect AI will manage an average of a third of their tasks within the next 12 months. Well, joining us now to discuss this is Cosmo Curry, founder of Van Kuysen, a leading company in technology recruitment.
Morning, Cosmo.
Morning.
Good
Hi,
morning.
Van.
Well, thank you for joining us. It's very interesting, isn't it? Because AI is, of course, on the rise, and now in the workplace and in universities and things. Another article came to mind. There was a student recently, I think it was in the news just the other day, that got in trouble for using AI. So there's, you know, for exam purposes and essays. So there's lots of different ways that it can be a good thing and a bad thing. But you're, of course, here to talk about the ways in which AI is a good thing within the workplace.
Absolutely. I mean, AI is here to stay, for sure. And we're seeing this rise of people using it in such a clever format. And the other side of it is also we're seeing people who are using it and during the process of that, they are losing their character. We're losing the actual insight into the individual behind that. And so we've kind of got this kind of mix. And I think AI is phenomenal when you're looking at it from a point of view of optimization, point of view of speed, getting results. But I think we have to remember that, you know, the fundamental of recruitment is people. And we cannot substitute the people, the personal aspect, by replacing that with AI.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Just want to give you an update, and you're seeing those pictures there, those flash floods, which have just wreaked havoc right across eastern and southern parts of Spain.
Yes, at least 51 people are reported dead. That's according to the Valencian regional government. Rescue efforts have continued overnight. Local media in Valencia is reporting that hundreds of people could still be trapped. But that breaking news in the past few minutes that 51 people have been reported dead as flooding has hit Spain's Valencia region.
Wild. We're going to talk about a number of things that are making the news this morning. We've got Norman Baker here in the studio. We say hello, good morning, and welcome to James Heal, who's there at Westminster this morning. James, you are the political correspondent with The Spectator. My friend, could we just begin by getting your opinion as to this budget, or what do you think's right or wrong with what we're hearing so far?
Well, I think it's all going to be about Labour framing for the next 5 years. Obviously, everyone's focus is going to be on the figures that are announced today, whether we're going to see a 1 or 2p increase in national insurance. But I think, Eamonn, the wider question is about strategic direction for this Labour government, which in its first 2-3 months in office has really floundered all about the place. So I think MPs are not just looking for the detail, they're also kind of looking for a direction as well.
Direction would be, Norman?
Well, as James correctly says, I mean, not quite clear what the direction is, because there's contradictory messages coming out from the government. On the one hand, they're talking about how this is going to be doom and gloom, and we've got to make up for all the 14 years of Tory disaster and all that kind of mantra. On the other hand, we're talking about sunny uplands and how it's all going to get better and more pounds in your pocket and so on. So the government doesn't seem to have a standard message it wants to get out. It's not selling itself very well. And in fact, some of the policies that are being put forward are contradictory. They're talking about helping working people, whoever they are. We don't know what working people are, because there's a debate about that. But on the one hand, they're saying that. On the other hand, they're putting bus fares up from £2 to £3, you know, 50% increase. And the buses are predominantly used by people who are relatively poor and go to work.
And should be represented by a socialist government. I mean, and you look at the fuel subsidy as well, being taken away, the winter fuel. And do you not think that is very contrary to what you would be expecting from a Labour government?
I think what I learned from being in government is that you've got different departments with different priorities. They don't all match up. So you end up with, in my time, we did Department of Transport with one policy, the number 10 another policy, and the number 11 a third policy. And it's that kind of conflict which leads to contradictory policies coming out. But yes, where the government should be at the moment is saying, what do we believe in? What do we actually want to achieve in the next 5 years? How does society want to be different? And can we make sure that anything we do corresponds to that end game? I don't think they're doing that.
James, anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, I think today it's all about framing this as a national government in the national interest. Labour's previous issue, as Norman says there, was about doing the winter fuel announcement in the same week as those big above-inflation public sector pay increases, which made the government then look acting in the interests of its backers, a sectoral interest government. Today, Rachel Reeves is going to try and reclaim the language of being a national party, of saying that this is a government that's going to deliver for all the people. The key thing, of course, is doing that in a way which doesn't alienate the private sector, which is expected to fund so much of the investment that's going into the public sector.
And it is this cycle, isn't it, James? Because, I mean, we're hearing about the minimum wage today, aren't we? Confirmed that that's going to rise in April to £12.21 an hour. I think that's an increase of 6.7%. So great news for lower earners. Bad news, you'd imagine, for smaller businesses, and some of them warning they might have to cut back on hiring. And in turn, that cuts back on growth, doesn't it?
Yes, and of course there were reports in the Telegraph last week that a record number of small and medium enterprises have closed in the run-up to this budget. And so I think that's the real concern for the government, which is that it obviously needs to appeal to its voter base. But the primary concern, I'd say, talking to people in the Treasury this week, has been about the markets and how the markets are going to react. So on the one sense, you've got British businesses, but also you've got people looking at the gilt yield, the American gilt yields, which is now higher than it was in the mini budget. So everyone in the Treasury will be watching very carefully, hence why we've seen so much speculation, hence why I've seen so many leaks, because they want to keep the markets on side in the aftermath of this budget.
OK. Have they kept the armed forces on side with this? We hear there'll be a £3 billion boost to the armed forces. I'm not sure if that's a good amount or just a drop in the ocean. What's your take, James?
I'm afraid it's a drop in the ocean. I mean, £3 billion does sound great on paper, but then the Telegraph, which has splashed this story today, does note in the third line that this actually means that overall the figure will be less than 2.3% of GDP, which is obviously how we measure our defence spending. So although it's great to see sort of members of the armed forces, squaddies getting a pay rise, 400 million of this money will go to that. Overall, Labour will need to keep putting more billions in if we are to meet our NATO commitments and also keep funding the armed forces properly in the face of China and Russia.
Norman, the story you want to talk about is what's called pothole lane. And pothole lane and people fixing the potholes, and this is in Hertfordshire,
yes,
has been going on for 60 years.
It has been going on for 60 years, and this is not unique. I used to come across these situations quite often as a local MP, but also as a transport minister. And the great problem has been that developers often build new estates. They don't always build the roads to go with them because they then go bankrupt after they got the money from the houses and disappear off to somewhere else in the world, leaving the mess for someone to sort out. Or they build the roads not to adoptable standard, that is to say they're too narrow, they don't have turning circles or whatever the problem might be with the roads. Or they look OK, but then you start deteriorating and find that the council hasn't adopted them. And then the residents have to adopt them because technically they are private roads. And if they're private roads, the council won't touch them with a barge pole because if they do, they accept responsibility for them. So I think it's been sorted out to a large...
It should be their responsibility,
Well, I think it's been sorted out. I think it might have happened in my time, actually. I can't quite remember. But I've got a feeling now that all new roads have to be adoptable standards.
Yeah.
But there's a historic problem with roads before a particular time which haven't been adopted, and they are often quite a mess. And, of course, the cost of bringing them up to speed is a huge amount, 71,000, I think, in this particular case, which the residents either have to find that money themselves, bring it up to standard, and the county council will adopt it, or alternatively, they get more and more potholes as time goes on.
OK. James, let's talk about the Falkland situations. And temperature seems to be rising as regards the Falkland Islands again. Why is that?
Well, really, Eamonn, it's all because of the Chagos Islands. And, of course, when the Chagos Islands were given to Mauritius last month and that announcement was made, there was some commentary suggesting, of course, that this was handing back the Chagos Islands. But, of course, they were never the property of Mauritius to begin with. And Argentina has seen what's happened there, and they're looking at what's happened in the Falklands Islands, and they want to say, well, we should have that territory. Of course, the Falkland Islands territory has never been anything but British. There's never been Argentinians there. And so what they're doing now is looking at the precedent they think has been set by the Chagos Islands and trying to demand that they get the Falkland Islands, which of course have always and should always remain British.
But the referendum of the Falklands Islands would say that people living there don't want to be part of Argentina.
Absolutely. I mean, Argentina's claim just completely ignores the, self-determination of the islands. And unlike in, the Chagos Islands where they didn't have a referendum, places like Gibraltar, places like the Falkland Islands have consistently demonstrated public support for remaining one of the British overseas territories. The government line on this, of course, is that there's going to be no change. But the Argentines have a case to say, look, well, you've settled on the Chagos Islands. Why aren't you going to negotiate the Falklands with us?
Yeah, they are actually different. That's correct, what James says. They are different situations, however, of course, because Argentina is, of course, drawing a lesson from the Chagos Islands to say, here's an opportunity to raise this issue again. But as James says, the Falklands have always been British, but the Chagos Islands should have been perhaps given over to Mauritius when Mauritius became independent, and they weren't, for reasons of defence, because we wanted to use the islands for defensive purposes, to build bases there. And in the meantime, we evicted a whole lot of people who lived there and put them somewhere else, which was a bit shameful, actually, what we did in 1968. So I personally think that the government was right to try and reach an answer on the Chagos Islands. I don't object to that. I don't think there's a logical read across to the Falklands. I don't think the Falklands are at risk. I believe the government on this occasion when they say the Falklands are safe in British hands, but I also understand the Argentinians want to try and make something of it.
James, let's talk about rats and sniffer rats and what they're actually being used for, and are they any good at it?
Yes, this is the latest news coming about sort of airport security and detecting drugs. Obviously, we're very used to spaniels and dogs with their excellent noses. Well, scientists now, turns out, can actually use rats to sniff out drugs and other substances. According to the report of The Telegraph today, it says that rats have been tested, put through months of trials, and it turns out that they're actually very good at distinguishing between powerful different smells like coffee or detergent and finding out when there's an illegal substance in there, and actually being used in airports. And actually, I didn't realise this, these rats can live up to 9 years, so it's well worth training them because you're going to get years of service out of them.
Dear, is it, Norman?
It is, and I see they can detect elephant ivory. Now, when I was at the Home Office and we were looking at matters being smuggled, like ivory, into the country, I learned that you can detect legal ivory from illegal ivory by yes, and the answer is because legal ivory is pre-1947. And illegals after 1947. And the reason you can detect it is because when the first nuclear explosions took place, actually it got into the ivory all over the world, if you like. So if you can detect the nuclear elements in the ivory, it's post-47 and pre-47 isn't.
Goodness me. I was watching a documentary during the week on one of the channels about poaching of elephants for ivory or whatever, and the horribleness that the elephants are caught with these loops in the ground that they put their leg in, and then when they move it, it tightens up, and it's just a hideous way for the animal to die. But it is big business.
Oh, it is. It's you look at drugs and arms and animals. They're the three big trades and illegal trades in the world.
China and India are behind a lot of this.
This false idea that rhino horn or ivory's got some sort of medicinal benefit. It's just like fingernails. It's got no benefit whatsoever, but you think it has, and they use it in potents and everything else. But I mean, this came under my brief, probably the Home Office when I was a minister, and the amount of money that's spent trying to deal with illegal trade is dwarfed by the amount of money can be made in illegal trade. And you get these African countries who are doing their best to protect their animals, and they've got a kind of a ranger every 20 miles or something. These poachers come in on helicopters with machine guns and just machine gun everything in sight. All the animals, all the gamekeepers just machine gunned out of the way. That's what we're facing.
Gosh. That's how professional it is. And then I know that's like the first line of defence and whatever. And then this goes right through to airport security, where people who are searching suitcases and things coming in, the amount of people, the variety of people who are smuggling either animal food or ivory or all sorts of things, it's absolutely scandalous what people are taking from one country to another.
Well, you take kind of 50 birds from a population of 100 birds, and half of them die in transit because they can't be shipped. I have to say that I think we do rather well in this country. I think the guys at Heathrow are really good at picking up on this, to the extent that a lot of people who are smuggling goods will now avoid going through Britain as a transit country because we get caught, we catch them in this country.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear.
Norma, let's stay with you, shall we, and tell us about this amnesia victim who was trapped in 1980.
Yeah, this is an extraordinary story, and I suppose not a very pleasant one for the person involved. There was a hit. This person had a hit-and-run accident in 2019, and when they woke up, they'd lost all memory of the previous 39 years. So they remembered everything they were doing up to a very specific date, March the 20th, 1980. They can remember up to that, but then nothing for the next 39 years. So they woke up and looked in the mirror and thought he was 23, and he was, of course, 23 plus 39, and said, who was this person in the mirror? I didn't understand it was him, because he'd lost all record of that time. And it's quite sad in a way, because he also didn't know who his son was, didn't know he had a son. And he said, how can this be my son? I'm 23 and he's 30. How can he be my son? He missed out on his mother's funeral, no memory of his mother's funeral. He said he's lost lost 2/3 of his life as a consequence of this. So it's an extraordinary, sad story in some ways, but it's also extraordinary in terms of how the brain works, that it cuts off at that particular date in March 1980 for 39 years, and that's just lost.
Incredible, incredible. James, let's go to you. There you are down in Abingdon Green, just outside the Houses of Parliament, on this budget day. Now, I presume, my friend, you will be inside the House today when Rachel Reeves gets on her feet.
Yes, I'm going to be there. It's always really worth seeing what gets a reaction in the chamber, because that is the instinctive reaction from Labour MPs. There might be an intake of breath, a sort of expletive or two under the breath, or maybe a cheer or something for which something they really like. So it's always worth seeing what the House thinks of it. Because, of course, 2 years ago there was the mini budget, and that sort of tone of shock and surprise really set the course for the market. So I'm going to be in there. We're told that Rachel Reeves won't be drinking, as is traditional for the Chancellor at the budget. You're allowed an alcoholic drink, if you wish, on budget day. But I think reading the analysis afterwards will make for some pretty sober reading, and one might need a stiff drink after that, after all.
And what is the mood like on budget day? How would you recount it to the rest of us, somebody who's never been there before? What's it like going about your business? And the atmosphere must feel different.
Yeah, there's an air of excitement and expectation, really. Of course, this is the very first Labour government budget for, more than 5,000 days, 15 years. And so everyone's very excited about that. There's the novelty of it. I think everyone's still getting used to their places. But there's always a sense of missing any rabbits or any sort of hidden wiring, anything that's going on that they haven't sort of trailed, and then also you have the day of trying to work out where all the black holes are and does all the sums add up. That's the classic game. So an air of excitement, lots of MPs assisted in the chamber, and journalists thereafter poring over these big documents. You get a big red book and you get a big sort of OBR assessment as well. So it's going to be a lot of excitement, then a couple of hours of quiet reading, and then maybe a bit more excitement in the evening.
Well, James, thank you very much indeed for taking time to talk to us today. Really do appreciate it, and thanks for the flavour of what's going on. Thank you.
I'm interested in Rishi Sunak today. It's his last PMQs.
Yes.
He's going to be watching the budget. Do you think he'll be thinking, this should have been me? Or if it shouldn't have been me, it should have been Jeremy Hunt?
I think he's probably very pleased it's not him, because a lot of the things Labour's going to do which are unpopular, he'd have had to do himself if he was still in power. I actually quite like Rishi Sunak. I mean, I think he handled himself with some dignity after he lost the election. People always remember how politicians leave, don't they? I remember John Major, when he stopped being Prime Minister, famously said he was off to go and watch the cricket. I think that rather endeared him to people. So how you leave something is actually quite important, not just what you've done while you were there. Yeah. So he'll be very pleased to shuffle off his responsibility. I don't know what he'll do with himself, go and spend some time in the States or whatever, but good luck to him.
He'll be in California, won't he? How do you think he'll say goodbye today? Do you think he'll challenge Labour government?
I don't know how he'll challenge him. I mean, I think if I was him, I wouldn't even be doing this speech. I would get Jeremy Hunt to do it. But I mean, if he is to do something, I hope he'll use humour and just try and lighten the place, because that's the best thing he can do for himself.
OK.
Norman, thanks very much indeed for your contributions today. Really do appreciate it. And we'll see you again next week. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, and do let us know how you're feeling about the budget today. We've heard from a number of you throughout the programme today. Always good to hear your thoughts. What are you fearful of? What are you hoping to hear this afternoon? gbnews.com/yoursay.
OK, we're going to give you a weather update and we'll be back right after this.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed boiler repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Same again today compared with yesterday. It's dry for most, some brighter spells here and there, but it will be windy in the far north later. For the time being, rain and wind staying away, but for much of the UK it's a misty start to the day. Any early fog will lift, and then there's going to be variable amounts of cloud floating here and there. You'd be lucky to catch some cloud breaks in the south, whilst central and northeast mainland Scotland faring best for some sunshine. Wherever you are though, it's relatively mild, 15 to 17 Celsius. A little colder for North Scotland, not as cold as it's going to get by Friday. And at this stage, mostly fine. But heading into the evening, the first signs of a change for Shetland. Outbreaks of rain turning up, increasing breeze, that wind picking up also for the Outer Hebrides. But it's staying clear for much of Aberdeenshire into Fife, as well as the Central Belt. Now for Northern Ireland, a lot of cloud around, but as you can see, there are some cloud breaks further south across England and Wales. They're going to come and go through the day. There will be a large amount of cloud still remaining. That means on Wednesday nights, where we keep the cloud, it's going to stay mild and it's not going to be misty. But there is an increased chance of some breaks in the cloud across southern parts in particular, and as a result there'll be a few fog patches first thing and temperatures will dip into these single figures. Meanwhile, it's increasingly windy for the far north and northwest of Scotland, with outbreaks of rain turning up, and it is a breezy day on Thursday. Eastern parts of Scotland and the far north could see gusts of 50 or 60 miles an hour. And it's increasingly damp over western Scotland with a lot of low cloud. The wettest weather there will be for Shetland and Orkney, also the windiest weather. Further south, lighter winds, mostly dry, and again, some cloud breaks coming and going, so some brighter spells in the south, 14 or 15 Celsius.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Aberdeenshire, the A90 is closed each way off the A948 at Ellen after an accident causing queues. Trains aren't stopping at Motherwell station because of an incident. In North Yorkshire, the A172 is partly blocked southbound by an accident on Marton Road at Grove Hill in Middlesbrough, causing queues. On the M53 on Merseyside, 2 lanes are closed southbound after an accident between junctions 3 and 4 from Whitchurch to Bebington, causing delays. In Lincolnshire, the A18 is closed each way along the Kingsway in Scunthorpe after an accident. In South Yorkshire, the A630 is partly blocked eastbound, where a lorry is broken down between Catcliffe and junction 33 of the M1, causing queues. In Norfolk, the A149 is closed each way between Dersingham and Sandringham, and on the A1 in Cambridgeshire there's a lane closed northbound just outside Peterborough after an accident between the Orwalton and Sibson turns, causing delays. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. First, we'll give you £20,025 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you £5,000 to spend on all of your Christmas presents, with a further £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. You'll get it all in time for the big day. For your chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. The biggest budget in a generation.
After months of rumours and build-up, today's the day. The first female Chancellor in history will reveal what she's got to reveal in a matter of hours.
Rachel Reeves will use the first Labour budget in over a decade to shape the political agenda for years to come.
Throughout the morning, we will be joined by people from all over the country, down around Westminster as well, and obviously want to know what you have to say and what you hope for.
But is Budget Day being overshadowed? The teen accused of the Southport murders is charged with separate terror offences.
Kamala Harris makes her case to America from the White House as Donald Trump speaks from Florida. Is it enough for either to power ahead in these extremely tight polls?
Another fine day for many of us, although we keep a lot of cloud cover. Meanwhile, it turns increasingly windy in the far north ahead of Halloween. I'll have the full forecast coming up soon.
At 9 o'clock on this Wednesday morning, a very good morning to you. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
It's an interesting mood around the country today.
It
is. An expectation of what this budget is about. And I don't think there's too many people feeling very positive about it.
We've been told not to be cheery about it.
Yes.
We've been told it's going to be difficult. We've been told it's going to be painful.
Painful and expensive, that's the thing.
And expensive,
so Rachel
yes.
Reeves, she hands down Labour's first budget in 15 years and becomes the first woman ever to do so.
Well, when the Chancellor delivers her announcement at 12:30 today, she'll likely promise to invest, invest, invest. Well, our political correspondent, Adam Cherry, joins us now. And when we talk about invest, 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 what we actually mean is spend, 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 Adam.
Yeah, that's right, guys. It's a massive tax and spend budget. We actually know quite a lot of what's going to be in that red box already because so much of it has been trailed in advance, as James Heal said earlier, effectively to calm the markets. So jaws aren't scooped up off the floor once we hear from Rachel Reeves at 12:30. Let's just go through some of those measures. So on the tax side, biggest measure is going to be national insurance for employers. Now, throughout the election campaign and indeed throughout the last 3.5 months or so, we've heard the government say they will not raise national insurance for employees, they won't raise income tax and they won't raise VAT. But for employers, it's going to go up by up to 2%, which means it could raise around 15, some say even £20 billion for the Exchequer. We'll find the precise details in the Office for Budget Responsibility reports later this afternoon. But a huge sum, not quite enough though, if you're trying to cover 22 to 40 billion pounds of the black hole that we've heard so much about. So there will be other tax rises as well. One of those will be capital gains tax, on sale of shares, although not on sale of second homes. Inheritance tax, that'll be adjusted as well. Will there be taxes on gambling companies, perhaps taxes on, or raising taxes on fuel duty, on alcohol duty? So a whole bevy of measures here. Now, on the spending side, the fiscal rules are going to be fiddled with a little bit, which means you should have now around £50 billion of headroom on borrowing. Headroom is not a target, so it won't go to that full amount, but we'll see spending on defence, so £3 billion for the defence budget, around £10 billion for the NHS over 2 years. There are questions from NHS leaders whether that will be enough, but they're just trying to arrest the decline, as the Health Secretary said yesterday. So huge amount to go through. We'll find out at 12:30, and then after that we'll hear from the Shadow Chancellor as well, of course the Leader of the Opposition, Rishi Sunak, and the Office for Budget Responsibility. But a very exciting day. Some would say a scary day in Westminster as well.
Adam Cherry there for us in Westminster, doing very well to compete with the shouting and the sounds outside the House of Commons there. Thank you very much.
Yes, he's very disciplined. I couldn't be as disciplined. I'd say...
You say, shut up.
I'd just say, no, I wouldn't say shut up. I would say, excuse me a minute, I'd hand the microphone. I'd go off camera, you'd hear a big squeal, then deduce what you want might after that. But that's it, the noise would have gone.
Well, I would have liked to have seen that.
At that stage. Right, so let's talk about other news with the time coming up to 9:05.
And the 18-year-old accused of murdering 3 young schoolgirls in Southport and attempting to murder 10 others has also been charged with attempting to make a biological weapon using the deadly toxin ricin.
Axel Rudakumba is also facing a second charge under the Terrorism Act, possessing an Al-Qaeda terror manual.
Well, GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White joins us now. Good to see you this morning, Mark. And what do we know about these new charges?
Well, the two charges, one is under the Biological Weapons Act, the possession of the deadly toxin ricin. The other is under the Terrorism Act, the possession of a PDF copy of the Al-Qaeda terror manual, which would, under Terrorism Act 2000, Section 58, amount to something that would be of use to anyone preparing acts of terrorism. So those two new charges will be put to Axel Rudakabana at a hearing here at Westminster Magistrates Court within the hour. He will appear via video link. And the police, while laying these two new charges some 3 months after the horrific events in Southport, are urging the public to remain calm and not to speculate about this case. But of course, no one wants to speculate on anything that could speak to the guilt or the innocence of the accused. He's entitled to a fair trial. But it doesn't stop people, quite understandably, raising questions about the timing of these new charges, coming some 3 months after the original charges. And that particular question was put to the Chief Constable of Merseyside yesterday. I was at that news conference in Liverpool, and I'm not sure that the question was answered satisfactorily, because what we know is that the ricin, according to the police, was discovered a day after the searches began at Axel Rudakabana's home address, and then about a day or so after that, the government laboratory at Portadown established that it was indeed the toxin ricin. So it was a full further 3 months after that before we get these new charges. So those are questions, obviously, for the future. Today, it's all about this appearance by Axel Rudakabana as he answers the two new charges on the indictment against him.
OK, Mark White, thank you very much indeed.
Let's run you through some other news stories coming into the newsroom on this Wednesday. An update on the flash floods, first of all, in Spain.
Yes, they've been wreaking havoc across the east and south of the country. We now know at least 51 people have been reported dead following torrential rains on Tuesday that left roads and towns underwater. Rescue efforts have continued overnight with over 1,000 emergency workers at the scene.
Kamala Harris has made her closing argument ahead of the American general election next Tuesday. The Democrat candidate made her case at the same place Donald Trump spoke from shortly before the White House riots in 2021.
We know who Donald Trump is. He is the person who stood at this very spot nearly 4 years ago and sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol to overturn the will of the people in a free and fair election.
2 people have been taken to hospital after a fire broke out overnight at the UK's nuclear submarine base in Cumbria. Locals have posted pictures online showing a building at the shipyard on fire. Cumbria Fire and Rescue Services have encouraged people to stay away from the area.
A chance now to take part in our great Christmas giveaway. We're giving you the chance to just do whatever you want for Christmas on us. Great British giveaway. Here it is, all the details you need.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. First, we'll give you £20,025 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you £5,000 to spend on all of your Christmas presents. Christmas lunch, that's on us too, with a further £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. And the best news, you'll get it all in time for the big day. For your chance to win, call 0903 6 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Just thank you very much indeed for your comments coming in to us this morning. Pat says on this whole budget, she says, I'm 77 years of age. I'm an old age pensioner. I've worked for over 60 years, but that counts for nothing. It's like I've saved for my old age, tried to be independent, all gone now. I know the budget will give me nothing, so I expect nothing. I've lost my helping winter heating allowance. I get a quarter off council tax as I live alone with just a faithful dog who knows nothing about budgets. Why worry? The decisions have already been made, says Pat.
Lee says, I really have not been looking forward to today. I want to go back to bed and wish this was all a bad dream and that Labour didn't win the election. Kathy says, the slogan, working people won't face tax rises, is nonsense when they cannot define what a working person is. Are they afraid to say working class? Surely everyone that draws a salary is a working person, whether they're white or blue collar.
Yeah, they are afraid to say working class. They're afraid to say poor. They're afraid to say downtrodden or anything like that. So it's, you know, anybody further down the ladder is hard working. Anybody further up the ladder is deemed not to be hard working. That's the way it goes. Good news on the TV front. I was talking about the actress Sophie Turner. She's on a series on ITV. It's on ITVX now. That's her. Sorry, there, Sophie Turner. Absolutely, she is brilliant. She is superb. John says Joan was very good. Watched it all. Kristen says agree, Eamonn. Sophie is fantastic in Joan, great series. And Elaine says, yes, Joan was an absolute fantastic watch. It is.
My new
I'd
series.
recommend it to you. Don't miss it. It's there on ITVX. And she is an amazing actress, really.
And very rich too, you were telling us earlier. She's on the rich list, isn't she?
£8.5 million.
Not too shabby, is it? Not too shabby?
Not too shabby at all.
Do keep your views coming in on any of those topics, including Sophie Turner. gbnews.com/you'll say.
OK, we're back. We're talking about more right after this short break.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This week is Chocolate Week, the ultimate celebration of everything rich, sweet and indulgent.
Yes, and we now have the best person in the studio with us to satisfy all of your chocolate cravings. We're joined now by master chocolatier Ollie the Choc. Ollie,
Hello.
really
Ollie.
good to see you this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And you brought some of your chocolate in with you.
I did. I brought some tasting samples. You're very welcome to help yourself.
So what have you got here? Tell us.
So this is my signature chocolate. I call it the Holy Grail. It's got sea salt flakes, crushed Oreo, caramel fudge pieces, very Moorish.
I love a caramel and salt combo, just, you know. I feel like you see it everywhere now. Look,
You won't be disappointed.
Look, I want everyone to see a close-up of this one. Can we get a shot on this one? So this is Oreo, there we are, caramel and salt. Do you want to try some?
You go first. Help yourselves. And then this bar of chocolate is a little bit of a wild card. That's a mystery flavour. So
OK, I love a mystery.
I'm not going to tell you what that is.
Hold on this one. This one's amazing.
Are you?
Oreo, caramel.
That's my biggest seller.
I'll keep my palate clean for this. So this is a mystery flavour.
You've got to guess what that is.
Is that a nut in there, I see? Right, here we go. Ready?
I'm not saying anything.
Talk us through.
Very crunchy.
For me, I'm all about textures in chocolate.
Me too.
It has got a good crunch to it, hasn't it? It's not the kind of flavour that you would expect.
Oh, I can't get it.
Is it sweet? Is it salty?
Wait, no, it's salty, yeah.
It's
okay.
salty.
Hang on, bit more.
Okay.
Bit more.
I mean, just keep going.
Crisps? Wait,
It is crispy, it's crunchy. Could it be crisps?
I think it could be crisps. Yeah, it's crisps.
So what flavour?
Salt and vinegar. Cheese and onion.
Yes, nailed it. You know.
Oh, you're much better than me.
Love that.
Do you know what? I think I've got a bit of a cold, so my taste buds are
Oh,
off.
you're going to blame that, are you?
That's my excuse. That's delicious.
GB News, the People's Channel.
So here's what we want to know. We've been asking this throughout the programme this morning, and now we're going to give you some figures. The question we wanted to know was...
Do you trust Rachel Reeves to put more pounds in people's pockets?
What do you think?
Well, the results so far say this. 2% of you say yes, you do trust her. 98% say no.
That'll be Mr. Reeves and somebody else she's related to.
OK.
So there you are. The final result on that. Can it change? Can it change when she gets on her feet and starts speaking? It'll be on Martin Daubney's programme from 3 o'clock this afternoon.
Yep, and for all the latest polls, news and how to vote, just go to gbnews.com/poll.
OK. Let's go to Beverly Turner today. Britain's newsroom's at 9:30. And Beverly's not in the studio today, so she's going to tell us where she is. Beverly, good morning to you.
Very good morning to you, Eamonn and Ellie, and everyone at home. It is budget day. I'm going to ask Uche to just walk back. Look, I'm in a library. The smell of school libraries, it never changes, does it? I'm in Lichfield this morning. The cathedral is just outside the windows, and I'm in a lovely little private school. There are about 500 pupils here, and it's one of those schools which is actually now facing incredible uncertainty because of the potential, the 20% VAT that we know is coming on private schools. I'm going to be talking to the head here this morning. I'm going to be talking to parents who are extremely nervous about what this might mean for their children at this school. It's a beautiful old building, but as so many of these schools are in these old buildings, it takes a huge amount of maintenance. I don't know whether you can see just outside the window there. We've got all morning for me to show you around, but I just want to give you a sense of this incredible building and this incredible place. And an incredible head teacher who I will be talking to, who'll be explaining that even now it seems that numbers for next year are looking lower than they might have been. And that causes genuine concerns about whether a building like this is the kids' canteen you can see here. Again, like the library, the smell of a school canteen never changes, it seems, even though there are no children in here this morning. I'm going to be talking to parents, going to be talking to teachers, going to be talking to the head. A lot to get through this morning on budget day.
But Beverly, give us the case. There will be obviously, you know, people who haven't availed of private education or don't send their children to private education, and they'll be aware of the image of private education, which is that it is vilified, and a lot of people would say that this present government has been waiting a long time to vilify private education. Does it deserve the rap or the branding that it gets?
I think it's very difficult to lump all private schools in with the same definition. I've been talking to the head here, Sue Hannam, this morning, and she was saying that the effect on a school like Eton from this policy might actually be positive. They've done a huge amount of building work in the last 10 years. A school like Eton can claim back the VAT on that building work. One of the teachers at Eton has reportedly said that most of the parents there don't even pay the school fees from income. They pay the school fees from investments. It won't matter to people like that. This won't have any effect. What it will affect are the very small independent schools, a lot of the faith schools as well. Those are the schools that will be affected by this. And Sue is very interesting. You'll hear from her this morning on the types of pupils who are here, those children who might have extra educational needs but don't qualify for an educational statement, because a school like this with only 500 pupils can really help those children. And it's about then taking away the choice. If schools like this close, then choice will go for those parents. So it is a very nerve-wracking time, actually, for the independent education sector, and that will also, of course, have a knock-on effect with the state schools, because the children that can no longer afford to be kept in schools like this lovely small independent establishment will have to go and find a space in the state school. And are those places available? Well, not necessarily at the moment.
Beverly, I'm so pleased that you've mentioned that, because I think so many people think about private schools, don't they? And they think about utter privilege. They think of the types like Eton, but where you are now, it's a small school, isn't it? There will be children there, and I'm sure you're going to hear from the head teacher later on, with special needs, children with disabilities whose parents have worked very, very hard to put them in that small school, in those small classes. They get that additional care, they get that one-on-one time. It's those children that have been forgotten about in this conversation, isn't it?
It really is. And of course, there was that really, I think, a sort of very nasty tweet that Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, put out, where she said state schools need teachers more than private schools need embossed stationery. Well, I've been looking around here this morning, and I can tell you this building does not reek of embossed stationery. It is a building which needs work, it needs maintenance. There's actually scaffolding outside. There are builders on site this morning. And it isn't this idea that, you know, it is rather untrue that all of these schools are awash with cash, and this one-size-fits-all 20% VAT on all private schools is going to affect those schools which are populated by the children of professional working people, not the billionaires, not the gazillionaires, who won't be affected by this and probably have a second home and a third home and a fourth home around the world. It's going to be those squeezed middle classes. So we're going to be talking about that a lot this morning.
Thank you, Beverly. Thank you very much indeed. Beverly's not a private school pupil herself. You're not.
I'm not. Can you tell?
I'm not. But Andrew, I look at Andrew. He's an educated man. If
Comprehensive boy.
A what?
Comprehensive boy.
Well, you see, if you told me you were privately educated, I would say, yeah, well, I can sort of see that. And so the fact is, all of us have all come from the state system. But we would reserve the right, I think, to say, if we wanted to send our own kids or someone else's kids to go to a private school, we'd be OK with that, wouldn't we?
Absolutely fine. It's choice. And it was never a possibility in our household because there was no money. But if I had children and I could afford it, I would send them to a private school if I didn't think the state school was up to it. That would be my right. And I think this VAT hit, I think that Labour think it's a very popular policy. I think people think it's spiteful and class envy. Because this is a classic school where Bev is. I mean, a lot of special needs children are in private schools. They're going to be affected. And the idea that they're going to bring this in January, which could mean some kids could be taken out of school if mum and dad can't afford to pay the fees. Middle of the school year. So disruptive.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's the whole issue with the state sector as well. I mean, this influx of children from the private school sector. We don't know how many. Nobody
Some predictions, 40,000.
Some
it could be more.
40,000. I mean, what does that mean for the state sector? Well, we already know there's a shortage of teachers and crumbling schools.
Yeah, well, when Emily Thornberry, who was the Shadow Attorney General, said in the run-up to the election campaign, oh, well, if some kids are dumped in the state sector and there's some disruption, that's a price worth paying, she was fired. She didn't make it into government, did she? Because she was just saying what we know. There will be kids going into the state sector and there isn't enough room.
Outside the budget, I mean, is there any other news today outside the budget? Or what?
I think there's a lot of talk, isn't there, about the Southport knife attack, why it took the police 3 months to reveal that, that he's going to be charged with a terrorist-related offence. A lot of people are talking about that, and a lot of cynicism about the fact that these charges are announced just as we have a budget, which will, of course, dominate everything.
Of course. Oh, and Mark White's at Westminster Magistrates Court for us today. There's going to be a brief appearance by Axel Rudikanas. That will be brief, but a lot of eyes on that, I'm sure, today.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about the budget today, Andrew? I feel like there's a lot of nervousness in the air. We know most of it, don't we? I mean, have you ever seen it briefed so much?
But look at the FT front page. UK borrowing costs hit post-election record. The markets were spooked by Liz Truss's budget. Let's hope they're not spooked by Rachel Reeves' budget. It's a lot about how much she decides she's going to borrow. Markets don't like it when they borrow. Markets can destroy a budget. and destroy a government.
Well, we'll find that out. She'll be rising to her feet, I think, about lunchtime today. Is it 12 noon?
About 12:30.
Yeah.
And it'll be the last hurrah from Rishi Sunak, of course, because he, as leader of the opposition, will respond. I don't think people want to hear from him, do they?
Well, let's see how he says goodbye. I'm very intrigued.
Have a good show, Andrew.
Thank
you very much indeed, and thank you for watching us today. Ellie will be back in the morning.
Yeah, we're back from 6 a.m. Have a lovely day.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Same again today compared with yesterday. It's dry for most, some brighter spells here and there, but it will be windy in the far north later. For the time being, rain and wind staying away, but for much of the UK it's a misty start to the day. Any early fog will lift, and then there's going to be variable amounts of cloud floating here and there. You'd be lucky to catch some cloud breaks in the south, whilst central and northeast mainland Scotland faring best for some sunshine. Wherever you are though, it's relatively mild, 15 to 17 Celsius. A little colder for North Scotland, not as cold as it's going to get by Friday. And at this stage, mostly fine. But heading into the evening, the first signs of a change for Shetland. Outbreaks of rain turning up, increasing breeze, that wind picking up also for the Outer Hebrides. But it's staying clear for much of Aberdeenshire into Fife, as well as the central belt. Now for Northern Ireland, a lot of cloud around, but as you can see, there are some cloud breaks further south across England and Wales. They're going to come and go through the day. There will be a large amount of cloud still remaining. That means on Wednesday nights, where we keep the cloud, it's going to stay mild and it's not going to be misty. But there is an increased chance of some breaks in the cloud across southern parts in particular, and as a result there'll be a few fog patches first thing and temperatures will dip into these single figures. Meanwhile, it's increasingly windy for the far north and northwest of Scotland, with outbreaks of rain turning up, and it is a breezy day on Thursday. Eastern parts of Scotland and the far north could see gusts of 50 or 60 miles an hour. And it's increasingly damp over western Scotland with a lot of low cloud. The wettest weather there will be for Shetland and Orkney, also the windiest weather. Further south, lighter